We have everybody, all trustees are present, Mr. Chair, and most staff are here, and we have all the partners except the Administrators Association right now.
All right. Well, I expect Mr. Russell will appear. So if you could confirm that to Dave when he does.
Yes, I'll keep an eye on that. And Lee, if you could help me with that too, if you see him show up.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will.
And the management team is here?
Management team is here. I'm still looking for Miss Braniff. I don't think she's in yet.
I'm here.
I see her. She's there.
Oh, is she? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, she's there.
And I should say, Mr. Chair, that we are recording this meeting, so people should be aware of that.
Yes, thank you. All right, thank you. It's 7 p.m. I will call the regular meeting of the Board of Education of September 22, 2021 to order. And welcome back, folks, to the work and the district and school here in September. In particular, I wish to welcome members of the management team. I understand we have, of course, Superintendent Eberwin, Assistant Superintendent McKenzie, Secretary Treasurer Reed, and Director of Instruction Braniff and Director of Instruction Hunter. We also have our partners represented. Ms. Nola Welsh is representing CUPE, Mr. McEwen for the Saanich Teachers Association, Ms. Monique Hiltz for COPAX, the Confederation of Parent Advisory Councils of Saanich, and Mr. Cal Russell does intend to attend on behalf of the Saanich Administrators Association. Of course, all of us wish to acknowledge, and I do this on behalf of the board, that we are this evening meeting on the traditional territory of the Wasanich people who have lived, worked, and learned on these lands since time immemorial, and that we make this acknowledgement with gratitude and with respect. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda, trustees? Trustee McMurphy, seconded by Trustee Van Wel. Are there any late items or revisions to the agenda? All in favor then? Sorry, Trustee Holman, I see your hand. Is there something there?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Included in the board follow-up report is an item around food sustainability, and I did want to ask about the timing of that list coming to the board. Is that something that we could add to the agenda for an update?
Who was someone trying to respond to that before we deal with the motion? No? All right. I'm just looking for the document, Trustee Holman. Just give me a sec, please.
It was the board follow-up, and I believe in May there was a report to the board around food sustainability at the schools, and we had asked for a list of those programs, and I believe the action was to have a list available for the board, and I'm just wondering the timing of that, if we could add that to the agenda for response.
All right, well, perhaps you could move a motion to include it in the agenda, Trustee Holman.
Thank you, Chair. I would move that we include an update on food security list for the board.
And the proposed placement of that would be, Mr. Reed, other business as submitted?
Yes, that's where it could go.
All right. Is there a seconder for Trustee Holman's motion to add the issue of food sustainability to the agenda under item 16? Trustee McMurphy, is there any just further discussion on the motion?
Sorry, Chair Dunford. Trustee Martin had her hand up first. Sorry, just to let you know, she seconded it.
Yes, I think I said that. Have I got that right?
Yeah,
moved by Trustee Holman, seconded by Trustee McMurphy. Trustee McMurphy, did you wish to speak to it?
Does Trustee Holman want to open first? Or did she already?
I assumed she did, but I'll give you
Okay.
another opportunity, Trustee Holman, if you have further submissions.
No, I think I've indicated that I'm hoping we could have an update on the availability of that list and the timing. Thank you.
Yes, thank
I
you.
just wanted to
Trustee
say I seconded the motion, knowing that at this kind of short notice, staff might not be able to give a report because it is in progress, but perhaps we can deal with that when we get to it. If there's no report available, then we could put it on a future agenda.
Yes, thank you. Trustee Martin?
Thanks, Chair Dunford. I just have it might be under other business, and it's just, we had chatted at one of our public board meetings related to the Children's Development Center around traffic. And I believe
just hold that thought, Trustee Martin, if you would. We'll deal with Trustee Holman's motion first. I'm sorry, I thought you were about to speak to that, but you have a proposed second item, do you? Okay, let's deal with the addition of the food sustainability list. Is there any further discussion on that? I'll put the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. So thank you. That will be added as the third item under other businesses submitted in number 16. Trustee Martin.
Just that we had chatted at a public board meeting about the superintendent was going to reach out to our principal at Children's Development Center regarding, it was around traffic safety. And I've had a number of community people ask me about the traffic right across from CDC. So just wondering if there is an update on that.
So would you like to move a motion to amend the agenda to include that issue of traffic at the CDC?
Yeah, if there is further information. If not, if we can get an update at the October board meeting. It was on the public meeting, and we definitely have had some local members asking about it. So if we haven't got an answer now, great, but I would like one by October.
Oh, all right. Well, okay, before we move the motion, if it shortcuts it, Mr. Reed, do you have any information on this?
No, I don't.
Okay, so what do you want to do, Trustee Martin?
If we can leave staff some time to deal with it. Is it possible the superintendent knows anything?
He's shaking his head.
I mean about traffic study. Sorry.
Is that a motion?
A traffic study.
Now we're cooking with gas.
Well, let's not open up that Pandora's box, shall we, this evening? But no, I don't have any information on traffic conditions at CDC.
Okay.
At this
So
time.
then, Chair Dunford, I will move a motion that if staff could bring us back that information to the October or November board meeting related to the traffic safety at the Children's Development Center, please.
You know what? We're dealing with the agenda, Trustee Martin. So if you want to move anything or discuss that in any way, you need to get it on the agenda.
Okay. So then we'll put it on the agenda, please, under any other business.
All right, that would be the fourth item under other business. What do you want to call it? Traffic at CDC?
Traffic safety evaluation at Children's Development Center.
Is there a seconder for Trustee Martin's motion to add that to the agenda? Trustee Van Well, thank you. Any further discussion, Trustee Martin? Trustee McMurphy.
I'm just trying to get my hand down.
No, you're practicing, I can tell. Any further discussion from any trustees? Fine, let's vote, please. I'll put the question to add Trustee Martin's item under other businesses submitted. All in favor? Is there any opposed? Motion's carried. All right. Are there any other proposed amendments or revisions, or have we created a long enough agenda already, folks? All right. That being the case, I'll put the question on the agenda as amended. All in favor of adoption of the agenda as amended? Opposed? Thank you. The motion is carried and the agenda is adopted with the revisions and amendments noted. Mr. Russell, I gather that you're able to join us now on behalf of the Saanich Administrators Association. Welcome to our first meeting of the school year, and thank you for your contribution. Prior to this regular meeting, the board held an in-camera meeting and we discussed personnel matters and business affairs. Moving to item 3, adoption of board meeting minutes. The first is the minutes of the meeting of June 16, 2021. Mr. Reid, you have a proposed amendment to those minutes, I think.
Thank you, Chair. We noted a correction earlier today to the June 16th minutes, and it's on page 6, and it's item 16I, and it was the appointment of the vice chair. So it starts with Trustee Martin nominated Trustee McMurphy, and it's followed by seconded by Trustee Silzer. And for these, we actually don't second the nomination. So I'm proposing that we strike out seconded by Trustee Silzer and replace it with Trustee McMurphy accepted the nomination. That's what should be reflected in the minutes.
Trustees, is there? Thank you, Mr. Reid. Is there any objection, trustees, to that amendment to the minutes? Thank you, Mr. Reid. That's done. Trustees, are there any other errors or omissions to the minutes of the meeting of June 16, 2021? Hearing none, I declare that the minutes be adopted as amended. Before we leave that, folks, by the way, and completely as an aside, those minutes do contain a reference to a trustee abstaining and asking that their vote be, their abstention be noted. We won't change the minutes because that's an accurate reflection of what did occur. But for future, I've looked into this, and neither our policy 9 board operations nor Robert's rules provide for noting abstentions. An abstention is not a vote, it's nothing. And so the rule is that if a trustee votes against a provision and wishes their opposition noted, that will be, but not abstention. So just if you could kindly bear that in mind, thank you. Moving then to the minutes of the meeting of July 5, 2021. Are there any errors or omissions to the minutes of the special meeting of July 5, 2021? Trustee Holman?
Actually, I put my hand up in response to your note about the abstention, and I think that's very helpful. And I'm wondering if that will be noted and added to the policy guidelines so that we have it recorded for future.
I think that that's a matter for the policy committee to address if it wishes to, Trustee Holman. It's not for me to dictate that. I'm just reciting the provisions that we have currently in our policy 9 and in Robert's rules. If there's to be a change or someone wants to focus on that or advocate for that, the policy committee is the place to start. Thank you. So moving then to the minutes of July 5. Are there any errors or omissions to those minutes? Hearing none, I declare that they be adopted as circulated. And then the minutes of the special board meeting of September 2, 2021. Are there any errors or omissions to the minutes of the special meeting of September 2, 2021? Hearing none, I declare that those minutes be adopted as circulated as well. I understand there's no business arising from the minutes. There are no presentations and delegations. Partners, are there any questions from you at this point in the meeting? I'm not hearing or seeing any. Ms. Glancy, am I correct in that?
I see something from Mike McEwen. I think maybe.
Mr. McEwen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if now is the exact time to do it, but given that FSAs are nearly upon us, it came to my attention just today that what appears to be the the letter that the board is going to send home to the students in grades 4 and grade 7 suggests that the FSA is not used to rank students, teachers, schools, or districts, which would be in direct contravention of the Fraser Institute's statement that the act of publicly rating and ranking schools attracts attention, and this inevitable attention provides an incentive for all those connected with the school to focus on student results. I don't know if that is in fact the sheet that's going home. So I wonder if you are aware if that is the information that will be going home to students shortly.
Mr. Eberwin?
Thank you. Through the chair, I would ask Assistant Superintendent Mr. McKenzie if he could pull up the documentation if he has it in front of him. I don't recall that particular phrase in there, but Mr. McEwen, I don't doubt your recollection on it. I will say at the outset that information, this has been an ongoing issue that has been debated and tossed back and forth ever since I can remember. FSAs were invented many years ago. Certainly the ministry doesn't use it to rank teachers, students, or schools or districts, but you're right, the Fraser Institute has a long and storied history of taking data and somehow manipulating it and deciding that this is how schools should be ranked. It has been certainly in the news a lot, and it certainly has been tossed around as inappropriate and inaccurate, and certainly unfair in many respects to take limited student assessment data and graduation data and somehow rank schools as top to bottom. But that certainly is not something the ministry or the school district does, but something that the left-thinking Fraser Institute does for sure. But Mr. McKenzie, I'm not sure if you have that letter in front of you.
I do, Superintendent, everyone. Just with apologies, Mr. McEwen, could you just repeat the piece that you're citing?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to see if I can find the whole document. It says what is the FSA used for is the section, and it says what are the results of the FSA used for? In the quote there is, the FSA does not contribute to your child's report card, which is true, and is not used to rank students, teachers, schools, or districts, which is a little bit misleading since it is one of the major concerns of the BCTF and of the STA that this information is misused, as Mr. Eberwin mentioned, manipulated and misused by the Fraser Institute. And the reason that they have the information is because it's made publicly available by the ministry.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize, Michael. I didn't. I was looking actually at the draft correspondence that we have typically looked at in the past. So, are you referring to the documentation that the FSA has distributed out? I apologize.
Yes.
Okay. I don't unfortunately have that in front of me directly right now. So, if you want to give me a little bit of time.
Yeah, it was brought to my attention earlier this evening. I would have talked with you about it earlier today if I'd seen it earlier. So I apologize for kind of springing it on you, but you'd mentioned that you'd seen our information, but I haven't actually seen what you're sending. So I was just trying to double check on that.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I will typically let me review that for you, Michael. My apologies.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from partners or members of the public who are attending this evening? Ms. Glancy, I don't hear or see anything further, but
Nope, I don't either.
But virtual technology is sometimes limited. So we'll move on then. Thank you. And of course, there will be an opportunity later in the meeting for a second question period, should those arise. Moving then to item 6 of the agenda, which is the chair's report. I wish to welcome us all back to school and the district and board work. after the summer break. Summer, of course, had its own challenges with heat, smoke, forest fires, travel restrictions, and the Delta variant of COVID-19. But notwithstanding all of that, I trust that we had some rest and some change in perspective, and that we return to the task each of us is responsible for, renewed and refreshed. In the context of startup, we're still in the process, of course, of settling in to the schools, and it's required some adjustment with the PHO health restrictions, principally masking, but by all accounts, it has gone relatively smoothly. Superintendent Eberwin will have an update on enrollment circumstances in his superintendent's report, but I understand that it is more than expected, particularly at elementary. And so I want to express the board's thanks to the executive staff, our administration, our teachers, our support staff, and our parent and guardian community for their efforts and cooperation and support in bringing the kids back to school in an efficient way. Monday, we saw the federal election. If that's what it was, it seemed to be essentially a repeat of what we were experiencing before dissolution. But notwithstanding that, of course, the board and the district will look with interest at any financial assistance that may be forthcoming from the federal government to assist us in delivering public education during these COVID circumstances. It continues to be a challenge, and I wish to express the board's gratitude to all levels of government for their assistance and their support in helping us achieve our mandate thus far. This year for the board, development of the strategic plan for the next 5-year term will be the primary task and focus of trustees. This includes, of course, extensive public consultation and discussions with our partners. The plan, when complete, will prove a roadmap for our work and our priorities, and I continue to thank the members of the Strategic Plan Advisory Committee under the leadership of Superintendent Eberwin, our consultant Mike McKay, and trustees for their commitment to this. Again, Superintendent Eberwin will be bringing a report to the board this evening with respect to that issue. This is also an opportunity for me as chair to respectfully remind trustees, if you haven't had an opportunity to connect with the leadership of your respective municipalities with respect to their official community plans in the context of our development of our strategic plan, and that's a suggestion that has been made before. There are a couple of upcoming events to note, trustees. We have the Vancouver Island School Trustees Association Fall Meeting on Saturday, October 2, virtually, I understand, and I encourage all who can to and wish to attend. If you haven't registered and wish to, I think that Ms. Glancy can look after that. In my respectful view, arguably, the work of VISTA is at least as effective, given the commonality of interests we have on the island, as the work of our provincial BC School Trustees Association. And second, there is a partner liaison meeting October 15 and 16 in Vancouver for superintendents, secretary treasurers, BC ASBO folks, and board chairs, and I will be attending that. Administratively, the board tonight will discuss and hopefully determine the format of our meetings, our board meetings and our committee meetings moving forward, given the continuing challenges of COVID. There is some good news close to home. A few days ago, the media reported a positive development with respect to access to and traffic safety relating to Keating Elementary School. Trustee Holman and I, as Central Saanich trustees, are pleased to note that of the $4 million provided to districts by the province from the Active Transportation Infrastructure Grants Program, the District of Central Saanich has received $500,000 and will be applying that to constructing new crosswalks with flashing lights and sidewalk extensions near Keating Elementary School. Thank you to Central Saanich, and we look forward to the district continuing to work with the municipality to enhance safety for students. And finally, trustees and partners and public and staff, in my June chair's report, I discussed at some length the horrifying discovery of, at that time, some 215 children's graves at the former Kamloops Residential School, and the shock and the revulsion of the country as a result. Since then, of course, many more sites and graves have been located. The context, of course, is what this means in its reflection on the larger process of reconciliation with our Indigenous peoples. The superintendent will have more to say in district communications later this week and next. But on behalf of the board, I wish to highlight, as you probably all already know, the September 30 National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. This, of course, is a federal initiative and a statutory holiday, and is dictated in response to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action from its 2015 report. I regret that it has taken the horror of these discoveries to implement this as a day for reflection and commemoration on how we might advance the cause of reconciliation with our Indigenous neighbors. While it's not provincial, it is a day of commemoration and respect, as evidenced by the fact that our schools in the Saanich district will be closed for this purpose. I urge us not to treat it simply as a day off, but rather a time to reflect on our nation's role in the residential school system and the abuses that it heaped on Indigenous children and their families across generations. And beyond this, a time to reflect on our collective and individual responsibility as citizens to acknowledge this trauma, the alienation of our Indigenous communities, and the incremental work, commitment, and steps necessary to see reconciliation actually come to pass. In the words of Jody Wilson-Raybould, this is a time for substance, not merely symbols. It's also, I say, a time for action, not reaction, for instance, to unfortunate events such as discovering the graves. And so the board looks forward and the district looks forward to this day to demonstrate our continuing remembrance and our working commitment to our Indigenous communities for truth and reconciliation. Thank you. That completes the chair's report, and I would move to the report from the Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Everman, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll share my screen. I have a slide deck to share with you this evening. I would like to take a moment just to comment, if I can, before I start my own report, Mr. Chair. Your words around September 30th and the reality of the grave sites across our country and the impact on Indigenous peoples and others in our community has been significant. And yes, I will be putting out some messaging to staff later this week and to the parent community most likely early next week. We are fortunate that on Monday we have an extraordinary keynote speaker, Kevin Lamoureux, coming to speak about this very topic and others. He is a well-known orator from Manitoba, and we're very fortunate to have him join us on this day of learning and sharing, with the theme being reimagining schools as places of healing. So it should be a wonderful non-instructional day for our professional staff on Monday coming up, followed by the recognition of Orange Shirt Day on the Wednesday while school is in session, and then of course a national and provincially recognized now statutory holiday on Thursday, September 30th. So not formally part of my report, but I did want to comment and thank you for your words on that. Tonight's report has a lot of content that seems to happen with September. There's a lot to talk about as we start things up. And of course, this year, like last year, has some extraordinary natures to it. So I hope to provide an update to staff and to partners this evening on a number of topics. I will start with some preliminary September enrollment numbers. I'm actually not going to show you any numbers tonight because we're still counting as students are still arriving, and we're confirming if students who are not there are indeed coming or not coming. It is a bit of a bouncing ball during the month of September, but it is important, I think, for the board and others to know what the data is looking like in terms of trends. At the elementary and middle neighborhood school level, we are projecting above forecast for what we were predicting last springtime of approximately 100 student FTE. This had put some tremendous pressure on certain areas of the district in terms of trying to fit students in, and staff responded before school even started. We had an idea about where the numbers were landing, and we added a single division at Cordova Bay, one at Brentwood, one at Sydney, one at Keating, and one at North Saanich Middle to absorb some of the capacity issues that we were seeing. This allowed some distribution in some of the hot spots, if you would, and allowed us to have capacity at all grade levels at elementary and middle, where we were noticing our heads bumping up against the ceiling in terms of classroom capacities. And so a big thanks to both Secretary Treasurer Reid and Assistant Superintendent McKenzie, who spent countless hours working on this to figure out how we can make sure that when parents and students show up to school, there's a place for them. At the secondary level and online learning, it is much more difficult to predict because students can take partial loads or even greater than full-time loads, and that is still being sorted out at the school level and at sides as well. So it is a lot more of a bouncing ball in this situation. It tends to be what we're seeing is we're looking like it's trending towards forecast, maybe a little up, maybe a little down, but we'll have to wait until the end of next week to see what the 1701 tells us. So what does that mean for budget? Well, the net funding change is really uncertain, especially because at the secondary and online learning, we don't know what the numbers are that we're looking at. There could indeed be a small budget pressure, and the reason for that is a bit complicated. I'll try and give you the Coles Notes version, but certainly Secretary Treasurer Reid has his finger on that pulse. We had a huge surge in enrollment last year at sides, and we have a much lower enrollment at sides this year, closer to projection. But because we have a lower overall enrollment, we're under something called funding protection from the province, which gives us a partial amount of money per student that we're missing. As we increase in student enrollment, if we go above our projection, what we've staffed at, we gain that total funding and student funding, but we lose the funding protection amount for those students. And so it's not a full student increase that we're getting. We're only getting a partial student increase because of the funding protection that is currently in place. But because of those students are full students and not just a half a student walking through the door, there's a need to place them into classrooms and a need to put a full teacher into classrooms if necessary. And so there could be, because of that and some other factors, a slight funding pressure. But those numbers, along with the specific enrollment numbers, will be available once we've determined the 1701 next week, and those numbers will be able to come back to finance and to the board in the October meeting. My next topic is around the Communicable Disease Prevention Plan. This is something that was new this year, and it replaced the COVID safety plan that we've had for the last couple of years now, or a year and a half. And that's because the province has mandated that all public institutions move to this type of plan. There are some differences from the safety plan from last year. On the right-hand side of this page, you can see the CDC guidelines, and on the left is the Saanich version of just simplifying it with some broad-based titles. There can be regional differences. Last year is a provincial plan, and this year regional health officers have the authority and the obligation to implement different structures or different safety protocols if they feel it necessary, not only for the health region, but it could be at the school district level or even at the school level. That vaccines are present this year that weren't present at this time last year. And there's the option of the health authority requiring schools to offer some vaccine clinics, and those have been taking place around the province as well. We had one school clinic at Stellies Secondary last week. Large gatherings are now allowed in school, meetings are allowed, learning groups are no longer required. Another term for learning groups is student cohorts. We had those at elementary, middle, and secondary levels. Cleaning and disinfecting frequency now follows the provincial norm of once a day versus an individualized program for schools as separate entities. Visitors are still allowed into schools. They must sign in, they must wear masks, and community use is allowed as school districts feel it appropriate to accommodate them back into their buildings. And of course, they would need to abide by any community use requirements as well, because they're not a school function, they'd be a community function, and so any of those health requirements for community access would be required. And of course, we've been able to move back to semestered systems at our secondary schools for curriculum development. We've been able to make sure our programs are running successfully this year, and various activities like sports and intramurals can now occur. One of the things we've made sure of last year, and we have continued this year, is to make sure that our ventilation systems in all of our schools are running at top efficiency. Our filters have all been increased to something called MERV 13, and before the pandemic, I'd never heard of a MERV 13 filter before, but those have a particulate screening similar to a high-end biological laboratory, so they're very high-end filters. They do require more energy to use because it's more difficult to push the air through them, and they have to be replaced more frequently, and they are more expensive, but all of those filters are now present in all of our buildings. We continue to inspect and maintain the systems according to the ASHRAE standards, and we look at air exchanges on a daily basis and monitor them from the district facility office to make sure that air exchange, we're bringing in fresh air from the outside, is as much as possible. Certainly as the weather gets colder, it becomes more difficult to bring in a lot of fresh air because our heating capacities were never meant to bring in a large amount of outdoor air. And of course, if there were any huge weather extremes and those types of things, or if there were forest fires and smoke alerts, we would have to adjust our ventilation system, all according to BC CDC guidelines. And so this ventilation report can be found on our district website, as well as the communicable disease plan under the COVID-19 tab. And so they're easily accessible. You go to the main page, you click on COVID-19 update, and this is the menu that you see, along with any notifications on the right-hand side that parents can access. So nice and visible for everybody if they had any questions about them. There was a request last springtime to talk about some of the SOGI initiatives that were happening in our school. We didn't make the June report because they were still ongoing, so this was the earliest opportunity to bring you some highlights on that. Our goal here in our district, and I'm assuming in most, if not every other district in the province, is to make sure that every student feels like they have a place in school, that everyone is welcomed without discrimination, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. And that in Saanich, each school has a volunteer staff member. It could be a teacher, it could be a QP member, it might even be an administrator at times, to be the lead champion in the school to provide accurate resources for staff and students. All 60 school districts, including our own, are part of the BC Provincial SOGI Educator Network. Last year at the district level, we ensured that all of our secondary and middle schools had active GSAs. They used to be called Gay Straight Alliances, but you'll notice the term has now changed to Gender Sexuality Alliances. All of our middle and secondary schools have those, along with some of our elementary schools as well. Middle and secondary students were given an opportunity to participate in the Vancouver Island SOGI Virtual Summit in May. where educators were collaborating on May 17th and 18th. Students were participating in leadership activities. There was discussion around language and identity issues, both locally and provincially, and what it looked like as in terms of media representation out there, and a conversation around two-spirit identity. So lots of district-initiated things, but also at the individual school level, there were things such as diversity art displays, rainbow staircases were installed in a couple of schools, school-wide pride days, and again, the participation in the virtual summit. And here's some photos of some of the things that took place last year in our school. So a very active network locally, and very proud to be part of the provincial consortium as well too. This work is led by Director Braniff. I am also here tonight to talk about the strategic plan. The chair referenced this in his report earlier.
Superintendent, I apologize for interrupting you, but I would anticipate that this portion of your report will probably generate the most discussion. And yes. Would it be reasonable for you to entertain any questions on the previous three elements before we move to this?
Yep, I can pause at this point.
All right. Having interrupted the superintendent, are there any questions from the board with respect to the previous topics? I see Trustee McMurphy and I see Trustee Holman. Trustee McMurphy?
Thanks, Chair. Through you to the superintendent. Just going back to the regulations around, first of all, thank you for the update on the HVAC and the air conditioning, air quality strategies that are put in place. I appreciate that information. But in your presentation, there was something about visitors having access to the schools. It says visitor access, community use, and you elaborated on that a little bit, and I understood that we were going back to a similar, an earlier version of visitors being allowed in schools, whereby if they were masked and whatnot, they could come in.
So visitors are still required to sign in,
right,
as they were last year. We are requesting that if visitors are wanting to come to the school, that they check in ahead of time, if at all possible. That may not be possible sometimes. Certainly parents are considered visitors in the school and they would need to check in at the office. Visitors into classrooms are permissible, but we're doing that on a gradual basis until we get more settled. Those are being limited in nature. Things like hot lunch programs are being talked about with PACs and school principals and those types of things to see if we can get those off the ground again this year. They weren't running last year. In terms of community use, we obviously still have community use in our buildings. We have two of our middle schools that have extensive community use with signed agreements that we have with the recreation commissions. But other community members might want to use schools, and we're doing that on a one-off basis as they come and talk to us and see if that's something that we can accommodate and welcome back into our buildings.
The reason, thanks for that, Dave. The reason I was asking this specific question is because I had communication from a parent who said that she has not even had the opportunity to enter the school with my kindergarten student to see what the space looks like. Is there some miscommunication here, or is that in fact true, or what would cause her to feel that she wasn't allowed to go into the school with her child?
I can't speak to that example because I don't know the specifics around it, but what I would encourage her to do is make sure that she touch base with the principal and ask what her request is specifically and see if we can accommodate it. I think one of the things we are trying to handle delicately is the anxiety that exists in our schools and in the community in general. I appreciate the need for parents to want to see the learning space. I think we also need to balance that off with the anxiety that exists with people having people just wander into classrooms. And so we're trying to strike that balance and make sure we do so in a gradual way. So certainly if she hasn't been experiencing that success, or she feels there's a blockade, she could certainly contact one of the directors or the assistant superintendent for that zone to figure out if there's something that we can do to see if we can move things forward.
Thank you.
Trustee Holman, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report so far, Superintendent. 2 questions. One is international education enrollment. Will that be reported in October to the board? It wasn't part of the enrollment report so far.
I wasn't reporting on any numbers this month, but next month we'll certainly see numbers including international.
Thank you. And thank you for the report on the SOGI activities at the school level. Very much appreciate that. Do we, as a district, recognize celebration of Pride? Like, do we have a Pride flag or anything that goes up on the reader boards throughout the district that participates in Pride Week or other events?
Certainly, the short answer to your question is yes. Each school will advertise and promote their activities. Those photos that you saw were on social media, for example, and so there's lots of advertising that happens at the school level, and we certainly promote that as best we can at the district level as well too. I think once we get our new website up and running, we'll be able to do a lot more of that with some visual impact that we're not able to do at the current time.
And do we fly the Pride flag at all the district locations during Pride Week or no?
No, we do not.
Thank you. Trustee Martin, please.
Thank you, Chair Dunford. 2 questions through you to the superintendent, please. Thank you very much, Superintendent, for this report. I know that August and September are incredibly busy for our schools and getting the setup and in getting ready to get back into the classroom. I have 2 questions. The first one is, you mentioned that we're no longer under the mandate to have to do the learning cohorts. And so I'm just wondering what the feedback is from our schools for our students and for our staff with the removal of the cohorts and what you're hearing about that.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to comment on that through the chair to you, Trustee Martin, and others. Part of the restrictions that cohort provided for us was the limitation on things like intramural sports and sports teams, and even students gathering together at lunchtime or in the hallway. Lunchtimes were separated by time in some cases. That put a stress on staff because staff was stretched thin to supervise. Students couldn't go from one area of the playground to the other, and while there might have been some benefits in terms of supervision because the kids couldn't run all over the yard, they could only be on the swings today and they were over on the pit tomorrow and those types of things. What we found with student cohorts was it was very restrictive both from a learning perspective and a socializing perspective, and that was very hard on students. Students found that very difficult, and some staff expressed difficulty and frustration. It actually limited options at secondary school as students were unable to get into courses because they couldn't join that other cohort. And so by relaxing that with the BC CDC and the PHO noting that the transmission in school was incredibly low, that exposures were out in the community and not transmitted in the school, there wasn't a need to keep the cohorts and limit those social and academic interactions. And so a short answer on top of the long one that I just gave you is I think the relaxation of cohorts has been overall a big improvement to the learning and social environment in our buildings.
Great. Thank you. And then I have another, you have a question. What is a pit? You said they're over in the pit or the...
I don't know. I was thinking like a sand pit or something.
Okay. So we're talking sandbox, not a pit. Okay. Thank you for that. And my second and final question is, so you've mentioned, and it relates to what you talked about. Can you tell us a little bit as a board, kind of, you mentioned the stress level in the schools, and understandably, this is a huge transition and there is the Delta variant out. And so I'm just wondering if you can tell the board how things are going for our staff in the schools and what we need to be aware of in this fall.
Well, that's a short question with a long answer, and I'll try and be succinct. It's no surprise that there has been a significant impact on mental health and wellness, not only in our community, but around the province, and I would argue, without statistical evidence in front of me, around the globe. That this has been challenging for everybody. And so with the Delta variant out there, with the uncertainty about what's coming next, I think my own analysis of the situation is, as people go longer and longer with uncertainty, it becomes more difficult for them, and there can be the expression of more extreme viewpoints than what might necessitate, what might be appropriate given the circumstances and the science in the present situation. And so we are trying to be responsive to people's concerns over things and yet still try to provide that rich, engaging environment in our buildings for students and staff. And we're only a couple of weeks into the school year, but it has gone very well so far. I think as people get used to the schools again, and we see the happy children's faces running around. I've had the opportunity to be in a few schools already this year, and it is palpable, the sense of relief that you can see on people's faces. But that's not to dismiss or to belittle the sense of anxiety that still exists out there. And so we do tread that very fine line of making sure that we try and find the best path forward while trying to accommodate people who are literally on very polar extremes about what the pandemic means to them personally and what they want for their children in the schools. But I think we're on the right path. We have a very supportive community overall, and I think we need to continue to focus on mental health and wellness. Director Brand just put out her very first monthly bulletin on mental wellness just the other day, and it's those types of things that I think show our community that we continue to care.
Thank you. Superintendent, I see no other questions if you wish to carry on.
All right. Okay, let's go back. Let me get to the right slide here. So the strategic plan. We've been working on this since about March, so we've been at it for quite a number of months, almost 6 months now. We've met several times with the SPAC committee. We had a board planning day in August, and our most recent meeting was on September the 16th with SPAC, which had senior staff present, 3 trustees in the committee, but most trustees were there for the meeting. I think all of them were actually, the rest as observers. And we had our partners there, including the Wasatch Nation, which was certainly wonderful to have such a robust group of people there. There were several items discussed, and I've tried to summarize them in some bullet points here. There were lots of comments. We met for 2 hours, so this is obviously a very brief summary this evening. But what came across for me and what I've tried to bring to the board this evening are these points: that the importance of a strong and integrated strat plan is really critical, and that it needs to align with the FESL report that I'll be talking about later and the school plan themes that will be developed in alignment with this. That there was a board decision from June 2021 that talked about the need to go out and consult and to use 3 themes as a basis, but to be open for other pieces of suggestions or other suggestions from these community consultations. And that we did a quick review of the 3 evidence-driven strategic plan themes. And there was a suggested fall consultation schedule. There was lots of conversation around this, that there was a desire for there to be more information around what consultation will look like. And so I'll bring that to the board for their consideration this evening as well. But I do want to remind the board and others in the room of what was passed back in June, that the board approves for community feedback through the community engagement process in the fall, the 3 focus areas for possible inclusion in the new strategic plan: literacy, Indigenous learner success, and mental health and wellness. And that this engagement process also seeks feedback regarding other possible areas that might be included within the plan. And that we look at all sorts of data, including transition data that we track for each student's success, and to inform analysis of the data collected as we work through the plan in the coming years to improve literacy, Indigenous learner success, and mental health and wellness. And so here are some of the comments from last Thursday's meeting. More detail on what the plan could look like. The Wasatch Nation, who is represented by Bruce Underwood at the meeting mentioned that they will be having their upcoming Longhouse program, which starts at the end of October. That program lasts for several months, and it's a time of introspection on the part of the Wisanish Nation, and not very much outside communication, as they are focused on this very important program within their own communities. And so when I went away and met with Secretary Treasurer Reid and others to try and figure out, well, what does this mean on a go-forward basis? I'm coming back with these suggestions this evening for the board's consideration. That we consult with the Wisanish First Nation early before Longhouse activities begin. That I think it would be inappropriate and misaligned with the board's values of inclusion to wait until the Longhouse program is finished, which would be in the late winter, early spring. And I think that would be too late to consult with the nation. So I think it's important in this next month that we meet with the nation in some capacity. With that in mind, thinking of a two-stage process here, that district staff go and receive initial feedback that could inform subsequent community consultation later in the fall or winter, that we would communicate this feedback with SPAC and the board later on this fall of what we have heard, and that may influence how and whom we consult with later on in the process this fall. That we indeed follow the June 2021 board decision to use the 3 themes as a focus while still allowing other ideas from partners, stakeholders, and community. That there were suggestions made at the last meeting of a bunch of different strategic plan consultation things that we could do. And I would urge the board to consider the significant time commitment of expanding consultation to many different avenues. The time commitment required at the district level on staff to both coordinate and analyze these responses. I would remind the board that when this path was chosen a number of months ago, there was a path around using the data to decide on what themes were becoming evident where students needed to improve in their success, and to use those themes as the consultation backbone going out into the community. That there could be a number of different consultation paths going forward, a number of different alternatives used for consultation. There were a couple of examples shared at the SPAC committee last week of other districts that were doing things. In particular, there's reference to one Lower Mainland district, and I would remind the board respectfully that actually that was one of the plans that was suggested as a possible route forward that the board chose not to implement. That particular district used a consultant and a consulting company that had the backbone and the expertise and the people power to move that forward, and it was the consulting company that did all of that legwork. That we don't have the capacity in-house, which is where the strategic plan has been placed by the board, to have an extremely extensive consultation program with a bunch of different pathways out there. There just simply isn't the staff capacity to do that. Whilst trying to recognize the board's desire to have meaningful consultation out in the community, I am proposing this as a plan moving forward that I believe internally staff can handle with the assistance of our consultant, Mr. McKay, that during the month of October and at the first part of November, that we work with the Wisanish First Nation to hopefully go in person into community before the Longhouse plans begin. That we prepare presentations for school staff at staff meetings in October on what the strat plan is, and provide them with an electronic survey to respond to gather that initial feedback from school staffs. That the ST and myself meet with COPACs in October to discuss the strategic planning process and to provide a link to that same e-survey for parents to provide feedback. That principals also meet with their PACs to do the same thing, and that we use a process similar to what we did last springtime with budget consultation to visit our secondary schools to receive feedback from students on these themes and what they mean to them, and if they had any other ideas. We would then take this initial feedback. We'd be able to collate that, specifically because a lot of it would be in the e-survey. There'd be some in-person meetings, such as with the Wasanish First Nations, and perhaps with student voice as well, that we'd be able to collate that information for a November SPAC meeting to provide that feedback and to have conversation about, well, what does that mean now in terms of going out to the broader community? What could those consultations look like? Are there different questions we need to be asking? Which group should we be consulting with? And then using the latter part of the fall and the early winter time period, perhaps over January, to go and get board approval for that second phase of the consultation and move out into community and find an opportunity to consult with them as well too. So I'll stop there at this point because that's my next part is around the FESO report.
Thank you, trustees. Are there any questions or discussion with respect to this issue of the report on SPAC and the strategic plan? Trustee, I think that's Trustee Martin, or is it?
Yes, I'll take my screen down here, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Sorry,
I
I was I think second or third, Chair Dunford. So I will graciously. I think it was Trustee Holman and then Trustee Stelk and then me. I apologize.
I don't even see Trustee Stelk.
I didn't either, but yes, she is there. Yeah.
She is
All
there.
right.
Yeah,
All
she was
right,
ahead of me.
Let's go with Trustee Holman first. Do you anticipate moving your motion at this point, Trustee Holman?
I do have a question, and yes, I do have a motion that I wish to put forward.
All right, your question, please.
Okay, so at the SPAC meeting on the 16th, I had asked for a report on the budget for strategic planning in terms of the consultation and an indication as to what we budgeted and where we're at in terms of expenditures to date.
Yes,
so that's my question.
I can report on that now, Mr. Chair, if you would like.
Yes, please.
Back in February, I believe the board passed a motion to assign an initial amount of $20,000 to be reviewed in the fall to begin the strategic planning process. To date, we have spent just over $14,000. So we have a few $1,000s left in that original $20,000 budget. And so my suggestion is that we would, once we know what we're looking at moving forward from this evening, we could bring back some thing to the October board meeting for board approval if there was a desire to move at that time to approve an additional budget.
Thank you. And the other, it's not a question, rather maybe a preference. I appreciate the slides and the approach for the next few months. I just would like to reiterate and say again, I think an opportunity for members of the board to meet with the members of the tribal school board as well as leadership, I think would be very helpful. Some sort of opportunity to break bread and build relationship, introduce as well. I'd like to, I guess, put a suggestion forward that we consider that in addition to the staff consultation. Just sharing those thoughts. And finally, I did circulate to members of the board and senior staff a motion, which I'm going to put in the chat box. I think it's there. I don't know whether there was any opportunity to incorporate that into something that could be shared, but perhaps the chat is the best we can do, unless that's possible. So
I would ask you to read your motion, Trustee Holman, please.
Okay, Thank you. So whereas strategic planning is a participatory tool that cannot function unless there's two-way open exchange of ideas, and a good strategic plan involves people at all levels of the school district and requires input from everyone if it's to succeed. And by involving more people among the various levels, it fosters teamwork and a sense of ownership. All of these points were taken from a BCSTA strategic planning document. So be it resolved that the board, through SPAC, include as part of the communication and engagement process, 1, an invitation to all administrators, teachers, parents, students, unions, partner groups, and other community members, such as local service providers and education experts, to provide input on strategic priorities by way of online meeting forums and website surveys, and 2, through letters or emails to survey graduates and their families and those who have left school prior to graduating.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for Trustee Holman's motion? Trustee Martin? Do you wish to speak to it, Trustee Holman?
So I'll speak to it as a trustee and as somebody who participated in the last strategic planning session of the district, and I participated then as a municipal councillor from Central Saanich. The last strategic plan had a very extensive engagement process. I attended a couple of those sessions. It was very robust, and I think produced a broad sense of input. I think that as the introduction to the motion states, the strategic plan is to not only hone in on some specific objectives, but to build awareness and buy-in and create a two-way dialogue. And I do appreciate that the new plan is looking more at how to link the strategic plan to school plans. So as somebody who's participated in the past to see a very robust process, I'm hopeful that we will continue with robust engagement and using technology wherever possible, and structuring a survey so that it minimizes the tallying and the work that goes into it. I think that we can still go broadly. But I think it's really important as we move forward to check in not only on the 3 themes, but on a more broad perspective. I think one of the areas that we may hear about is career preparation, just thinking. So I think that the taking an approach to invite everybody in some way to participate is really important, again, to build that buy-in, participation, and to know that we've reviewed all possibilities in terms of where to direct our focus for the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Trustee Stelk, you were on my earlier list, but I don't know if you wish to speak to this motion or wish to speak later after we've dealt with this motion.
No, I'd like to, well, both probably, but I would like to speak to the motion.
All right. Is this
appropriate time?
Yes.
Okay. I have two concerns. One, of course, is the cost of doing the the budget amount. And the second is capacity, which I understand from the superintendent, we're a middle-sized district. And as our consultant has said, you can do, what is it? You can't do everything. So I'm very much aware, and we have COVID going on right now. I think we have the Strategic Plan Advisory Committee, the terms of reference, which were adopted by the board, included that the committee would develop broad community input, but I think that needs to be couched in terms of reasonable consultation given all the circumstances. And I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is student success, and we could spend every hour and every dollar working on an excellent strategic plan, but our teachers are working hard every day. And we have limited capacity, and I'm very aware of the fact that we need to have some direction and some parameters on how we move forward with the strategic plan, and we have a time limitation. There are new ministry requirements since the last one was done, which focus districts very much on the areas that they need to complete. We have 3 focus areas sort of based on district data, and have 3 areas of concern. And I'm not opposed to engagement, but I am opposed to opening it up to do everything, because I just don't think we can do it. And I think it's unfair to our students and our staff. Thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Martin?
Thank you. I mean, I do agree with my colleague, Trustee Selk. I mean, this is huge. So first of all, I do recognize what the superintendent has said around capacity and an interview panel. What strikes me about the strategic plan as outlined by the superintendent is a lot of the information is going to be filtered by the senior staff to the board. This is the board's strategic plan, and where we will learn and be informed about our leadership and what our students and our staff need is by listening to them, to be in a room, to hear them. And I don't see trustees kind of involved in that. And I do recognize the cost, and I recognize my colleagues' very real concern. On the other hand, we can go through this process and we can all look at boards around the province that have done a great strategic plan, but they have lacked a true engagement. And I'm not saying a marathon engagement, but a true engagement that actually lacks a connection, and those boards really weren't involved in the process. They really were told by staff, this is what we heard. But to be in a room and to hear our students and to hear our teachers and to hear our support staff and to hear a range of people, that is invaluable. And so I do think trustees have to be a central part to the consultation. And I do accept what the superintendent says about capacity, but if the board really wants this to be done well and not a marathon and recognizing there's limits, I think that we may need to kind of bring in extra capacity. And in terms of the timing, I think it's pretty evident to all of us, we can't be bound by a January adoption date. And looking at what Trustee Selk said, and which is very real, the Delta variant's adding a complexity. It's going to affect our engagement. I wonder if, given also the Wasanich Nation is heading into longhouse ceremonies, if it doesn't make sense to kind of regroup, develop a very detailed communication plan, develop a strategy in-house, and at that point in time, the board can be informed if we're going to really have the capacity, and then start in January. And by that time, the Wasanich Nation will be coming out, but it gives a bit of time. I feel that we're kind of being moved forward really quickly because we've got this very firm timeline. And my understanding, Secretary Treasurer Reid, it's not legislated, correct? The timeline for the new strat plan.
Sorry, just unmuting. No, the timeline's not legislated, but boards are required to have a strategic plan as part of this. Okay. And the current plan expires at the end of June.
Okay, June 2022. Okay. All right. So I have a proposed, this is speaking to the motion, Chair Dunford, I have a proposed amendment to Trustee Holman's motion, and I'm happy for wordsmithing because I don't, but I would like just this option on the table and for consideration and not be written off before we kind of look at the pros and cons of it. So that would be my amendment.
So I'll come back to you, Trustee Martin, because you've spoken at some length and there are others who are on the list, and I'll come back to you for your amendment if you wish to formally place it. Trustee McMurphy?
I am in support of the intent of the motion, which is, I think the thrust of the motion is to expand our sources of input as broadly and as conveniently for the sources as possible. But I'm not sure that this is the way to do it. So I'm in a bit of a dilemma. I don't want to vote against a motion that says we need to have broad input from our various communities. But I'm uncomfortable with the actual motion as it's worded. Probably none of us want to vote against input. So I don't know if they, let me ask a question. Would it be possible for this motion to be referred to SPAC for consideration, for advice to the board? What I'm wondering about, through you, Chair, to the superintendent, I guess, do we have a SPAC meeting coming up in the next month? I'm not aware of the timeline.
If I can, Mr. Chair, through you, no, we don't have a scheduled meeting yet. We were taking this recommendation to the board to figure out where we were going before we planned another meeting. Just a point of clarification, if I can, while I have the floor for a minute here. If we do not engage with the local Wasatch Nation now in October, we probably won't get to them until March. That's how long Longhouse works. And I think it would be a mistake to include them in the conversation towards the end of the consultation process. I think, honestly, from my perspective, we need to ensure they're towards the beginning of the process, which means that if that was the case, we wouldn't be starting consultations until March, and it's September now. And I think by having what I've outlined here as this two-stage plan, we get some initial feedback. And my apologies, Trustee Martin, in that chart, which I'll show again on the screen here, my intent wasn't to exclude trustees, but to not necessarily assign you to roles at this point in time, but have that conversation. So things such as meeting with school PACs, going and involving yourselves with a student voice, perhaps even sitting in a staff meeting might be a good opportunity for trustees to hear that initial feedback. Then we gather that and come back to SPAC again in November, December to figure out how we do that broader consultation that I'm hearing is resonating with some members of the board this evening. So that's what I've tried to do with this particular proposal. So I would caution against going back to SPAC and getting approval from them at this time and coming back to the board. We will have missed our window of opportunity with the nation.
So thanks, Chair. I'm coming back to having had some of my questions answered and some of my concerns addressed. I will move that the motion be tabled.
All right, is there a seconder for that? I can't. Trustee Stelk? So moved by Trustee McMurphy, second by Trustee Stelk that the matter be tabled. Trustee McMurphy?
It's non-debatable, so I'm not going to open.
Thank you. That means, trustees, that we go directly to the question. We vote on
Point of order.
Yes, Trustee Holman?
I hope that you'll provide some patience and latitude, Chair. My point of order is one of process, because strategic planning is defined in the School Act as a priority for the board. And as a member of the board who is not on the working group of the Strategic Planning Committee, my only opportunity to engage in the process were other members who are not members of SPAC, who were considered observers, right, to not address the motion that I'm putting forward that I think is pretty key to not only provide opportunity, but provide for opportunity of success. I think is removing the board, all members of the board's voice on this matter, and so I'm concerned that a board responsibility that's been delegated to a working committee that doesn't include all members of the board, that if this gets tabled, we are not addressing the important concern or idea that I brought forward, and the time involved in it can be minimal. You know, we have ways to automate a survey and input. So
Trustee Holman.
My point of order is one of governance.
Trustee Holman, that is not a point of order. You're debating the motion to table. You've given some very good arguments, perhaps, why it ought not to be tabled, but it's not a debatable motion, and I rule against your point of order. It's not a point of order. And so we will go to put the question on the undebatable motion to table Trustee Holman's motion. All those
I would raise a point of order with the motion that was put forward to amend, that you said that you would go back to it. I believe that that was in order, and I was willing to second it. So I'm not sure about our process here.
That is not a point of order as well, Trustee Holman. Trustee McMurphy has the floor. She was entitled to move her motion to table. It's been seconded by Trustee Stelk. It's not debatable, and we're going to take the vote on it at this time. All those in favor of the motion to table, please signify. I'm counting 1, 2, 3. All those opposed. I'm counting 3. Who am I missing?
Miss Van Well.
Miss Van Well. I don't see Terry, sorry.
Yes,
No.
she's voted.
You missed Trustee Silzer.
And so Trustee Silzer, I can't see either of them, so I don't know.
Trustee Silzer, how did you vote, please?
Against.
Against the motion? The motion is defeated. Trustee McMurphy, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I would try an amendment then to the motion. And it would be as follows. Just a second, I've lost the motion. And it's an amendment by substitution.
All right.
That the strategic plan process include an opportunity for a random sample of administrators, teachers, parents, students, administrators, teachers, parents, and students, and other community members to provide input on the strategic plan by way of website surveys. Of our website survey.
Okay, I think to be consistent, Trustee McMurphy, Trustee Martin had told me she wished to bring an amendment. So I'm going to go back to her first.
Okay.
And deal with that. And then you may wish to proceed. Trustee Martin, did you wish to present
my amendment? I put my amendment in the chat box, but here it is. I would amend the motion to read number 3, interviews with representatives with above groups with a panel consisting of trustees, district staff, teachers, support staff, parents, administrators, where capacity and budget is available and deemed a priority of the board.
Is there a second by Trustee Holman? Do you wish to speak to it, Trustee Martin?
No, I think it's self-explanatory, and I tried to put some boundaries within it, recognizing the capacity constraints and budget concerns.
All right. Is there further discussion? Trustee McMurphy, your hand is up.
Oh, sorry, my hand's still up. I'll take it down, but I'm just trying to find the motion in the chat box.
All right, it is there. I see it.
Yeah.
Chair?
Yes, Mr. Reed.
Just for clarification, is the amendment to add number 3 to the end of the existing motion?
Yes.
Just for clarity? Okay.
Yes,
thank you.
it is.
Thank you. I was just going to ask that.
Yes, it is. Trustee Holman?
Yes, thank you. I speak in favor of the motion. I think it's a wonderful enhancement of the concept that's put forward. And I just want to reiterate that there is no requirement for an onerous process put forward in this motion. I think that it is possible to do it efficiently without a lot of staff time, depending on the way that the survey or other things are structured. And it does support what the BC School Trustee Association and the in-house learning that we've been doing by the Ministry of Education for good strategic planning. And that being particularly looking at trying to engage all members of the district community, the school district community, in a meaningful way. And I think simply reaching out to notify everybody and inviting them helps spread the word about the work that's underway and encourages input. So I'm very hopeful that that this will be supported, and thank you for the amendment.
Trustee Van Wel on the amendment.
So I do agree with getting out and surveying and getting a good broad spectrum of ideas and consultation. And I do agree with Trustee Martin's amendment. I do, however, have some concerns about the number 2 in.
We're just dealing with.
Sorry?
Terry, we're just dealing with the amendment at this point.
Okay, well, so I do agree with that. I'll get back to that one after then.
Right. I'm seeing a hand up from somebody, but I don't know who it is.
It's probably me.
Yes, Trustee Silzer, I'm missing you. I can't see you for most of the evening.
Do you see the hand icon?
I see you now.
Okay. Okay, so I wish to speak about the overall amendment. So if you want to go ahead and vote, you're asking for discussion on the proposed amendment to Trustee Holman's motion, correct?
Yes, at this point, just Trustee Martin's proposed amendment.
Okay, I have no comment.
All right. Is there any further discussion on the proposed amendment in the chat box, moved by Trustee Martin and seconded by Trustee Holman? If not,
could I ask a question? Would
yes.
That be in order?
Yes.
I'm just not sure when it says a panel consisting of trustees, district staff, teacher support staff, parents, administrators. Is that, I'm kind of trying to figure out, it sounds like those groups are going to be interviewing themselves, because the previous motion or the previous part of the motion referred to all those groups.
Trustee Martin, can you explain your intent?
I'm not clear.
Well, it's
clear
a similar model, Trustee McMurphy, it's a similar model to what New West did. So they actually had a panel. It was a consistent panel comprised of all those people who went and interviewed a spectrum of people that included all those people above and community groups.
So basically that's our SPAC, right?
Not necessarily.
Our Strategic Plan Advisory Committee.
We
have all those groups on there.
It could be, but I wouldn't presuppose that. But yeah, that's a natural kind of segue. So it is using that New West model. So it would be a set group of people that are part of it, and then we'd be bringing it back.
So it could be SPAC, you're saying?
Yeah, I'm not going to presuppose what the board determines is who, and the staff can determine, but SPAC makes a lot of sense, yes.
All right, I see no other hands, and so I will put the question on the amendment, the proposed amendment. All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Sorry, I don't.
I'm abstaining.
Okay, you're not voting, Trustee Silzer. Let's try this again, please. All in favor of the amendment? I see 3. All opposed? I see 2. The amendment is carried. Now, back to you, Trustee McMurphy, because I promised you I would deal with your proposed amendment next, if you have one.
Okay. I better go back to my phone here, sorry.
Do you want me to read it, Trustee McMurphy, or?
Did you get it down?
I did.
Brilliant.
That the strategic plan process include an opportunity for a random sample of administrators, teachers, parents, students, and other community members to provide input on the strategic plan by way of a website survey.
And do you wish to move that, Trustee McMurphy?
Yes, and that's an amendment to part 1.
Point of order.
Yes,
I'm looking for a seconder.
Just a moment, please, Trustee Holman.
Yes, thank you. The if I'm not mistaken, this was put forward as an amendment in substitution, and the what was read out seems to be in direct contrast to the motion, and so I'm just wondering if that is in order to amend it with the direct opposite, which was a broad invitation as opposed to a sampling.
Well, Trustee McMurphy has clarified in her most recent comments that this is an amendment with respect to paragraph 1. Is it, Trustee McMurphy?
Yes.
And I don't see the inconsistency sufficient to reject the proposed amendment. Now, do you wish to move that amendment to paragraph 1, Trustee McMurphy?
Yes, please. Is
there a seconder for that amendment? Trustee Stelk. Do you wish to speak to it, Trustee McMurphy?
Yes, I do. As I said earlier, I'm not prepared to vote against a motion that encourages engagement and communication, but I am also not prepared to embrace a process that will bog us down inordinately in terms of both time and cost. So I think if we had a random sample that would directly target some, a random range of people, we would get the information that we're looking for. It would generate interest in the whole process, I hope, and would allow us to feel more comfortable with we had actually received some input from people. So I think it's a more manageable approach to doing what the original motion proposed.
Trustee Van Well, did you wish to speak to this proposed amendment?
No, I don't. Okay. I was looking to talk after this one.
All right, I saw your hand. Trustee Silzer, did you wish to speak to this proposed amendment?
Sorry, could it be read again, please?
Yes. Ms. Glancy, please.
Yeah, just a sec. Sorry, I was unmuting. That the strategic plan process include an opportunity for a random sample of administrators, teachers, parents, students, and other community members to provide input on the strategic plan by way of a website survey.
Okay. Trustee Silzer?
Well, I think we're really complicating things so much here when we don't need to. At Strategic Planning Committee, my concern, I guess, was that we didn't have something called kind of a document that would be a community engagement plan that was generally setting out why we were going through a strategic planning process, what we were going to ask people, and that question would be, how can School District 63 best enhance student success in the next 5 years, given, and then have the themes come out and say, this is the evidence that shows this is where students in our district need help. And then we'd set out in this plan, a community engagement plan, who we would be consulting with generally, when we'd be consulting them, and how. So generally, I wasn't thinking that we would set out in any detail how or who, except in broad terms. That is, we would say, essentially, we have already gone through this process, as the superintendent says. We looked at the themes. We've spent many months working on this, but it was just a matter for me of synthesizing everything and saying, okay, now we're going to the community, and this list of people we would be consulting with was provided this evening. Now, the question that I have is about the assumption that the Wasanich people don't do business during Longhouse season. That's a pretty long period from October or November to March to say we can't talk to them. And I really have a hard time with that, because of course we've all had community involvement with the First Nations, our First Nations neighbors, between November and March in previous years. So we seem to be sort of, first of all, there seems to be this real sense of urgency that we have to have something that takes us to the First Nations community first. Now, maybe the superintendent can and others can confirm that we're really bound to do something in the next month. The second, my second point, I guess, is that we don't want to tie staff's hands as to how the consultation is done. For example, I attended a presentation of the Sydney senior town planner the other day, who reported on the first half of their OCP engagement. They used 8 different methods of consulting with people. And we're not going to come up with all the excellent ways that you can consult with community meaningfully. I mean, in a sense, my issue with the motion so far are that we don't have to say that we're going, well, we don't have to specify that we're going to be asking for input from teachers, students, parents. That's kind of a given in the community engagement situation. So for those reasons, I guess I really appreciate what Trustee McMurphy said, that she doesn't want to vote for something that's for broad consultation and asking people what they think. I don't want to do that either. But on the other hand, I don't want to say that this is how we have to talk to people, because as we go through the process, there will be probably, as people focus on the communication and the feedback, the drawing up the surveys, we've already had some good ideas come out. We're going to come up with even better ideas, and we don't want to be stuck with just, a meeting, a survey, just, we don't want to limit ourselves at this point. So I guess my first question is, no, I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Superintendent, you had your hand up earlier. Did you still wish to speak?
No, I took it down. I wanted trustees to have input. I'm fine right now.
All right. And Trustee Holman?
Thank you, Chair. I want to remind the board how much the feedback that the survey that was done around the remote learning, although it was a very time-consuming process, is what I heard. Having that level of engagement and that level of response was well received, well respected, celebrated by the district. And I think that the motion that's before us, or the amendment that's before us, to go from an invitation to everyone to a sampling group is not conducive to bringing everybody into the process of knowing that we're working on priorities or identifying priorities and working on the plan. And I think that the sampling is not something that will give opportunity to particularly those who may not be sampled and who may be struggling. And we're not reaching out to give them a venue. So I don't think this is onerous. I don't think it is expensive. I think it could be notification and an efficiently drafted survey that could be easy to tally, that gives everyone input and assures the board that we did reach out to all corners of the district. And so I'm not in favor of the amendment. I think it's very limiting, and I think it goes against the advice that we find in strategic planning documents for the Board of Education.
Thank you. I have included myself on the list at this point on this amendment proposed by Trustee McMurphy. I find myself aligned, I think, most probably with the comments offered by Trustee Silzer. I am observing that this debate is going to be close to an hour before we've resolved anything. Not that it's not important. It is, but there are many permutations and many possibilities of how we might conduct our public engagement. And I agree with the sentiments that this can be overly prescriptive and an exhaustive list is unnecessary. I like features of the plan that have been presented by Superintendent Eberwin this evening. And I don't think it's necessary for us to get into the depth that we are getting into. And so for that reason, I'm not even sure that we need Trustee McMurphy's amendment, but I will support it because it's less prescriptive than the option may be.
That's okay, I'm not going to.
All right, I don't see any other speakers or hands on the McMurphy amendment. All in favor of the amendment proposed by Trustee McMurphy, please signify. I see hands up, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? 2. So that amendment carries.
May I have that recorded?
Yes, Trustee Holman's negative vote on the amendment will be recorded.
Chair Dunford, there was 3 opposed. Trustee Silzer, Trustee Silzer, Trustee Holman, and myself.
I thought Trustee Silzer voted in favor.
She did.
You're muted, Nola.
Yeah, I did not in the end.
Oh,
You can't vote both for and against.
I can't?
No.
Sorry.
You have to pick a side.
And it was the latter.
All right. So I've lost track of our numbers then.
It was.
I'm going to call for the vote again. All those in favor of the McMurphy amendment? 3. Opposed? Hands up, please. I'm still counting. I see 3, and so the amendment is defeated because of equality of votes. Now,
call the question.
No, just a minute, please. Where are we here? We have a motion by Trustee Holman. It has been amended successfully by the the amendment presented by Trustee Martin. And so we have now a motion with an amendment, and you've been waiting patiently, Trustee Van Well, to speak about this. So it's you have the floor, followed by Trustee Holman.
Thank you very much. So I do have a question beforehand. I wanted to clarify it, if I could, through you, Chair, to the superintendent. And first off, I would like to say that, I mean, having something that is an engagement process, I think, is a very good idea. Never a bad idea. However, my concern is with the second one in the original, in the motion, letters, emails to survey graduates and their families and those who have left school prior to graduating. And I wanted to ask the superintendent, what if is that possible?
Privacy concerns.
Yeah.
Part of the issue that we have, yes, as Trustee McMurphy noted, if they're no longer under our care and jurisdiction, we really don't have the authority to reach out to them. A second point is that we use the MyEd database, and I don't believe it's possible to track addresses and contact information for students who are no longer in our district system. If they've moved to a different district, we lose access to that data. The new district gains access and we lose the ability to access it. If they've moved out of province or they have just dropped out and gone to the world of work, they become unactive in our system, and it would be extremely difficult to try and have any reasonable number of students that we could access. And the privacy issue is the one that rears its head for me, the largest one. We really don't have the right to go and solicit opinions from people who are no longer in our system. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Holman.
Actually, Chair, can I have a follow-up?
Yes.
Please. I would like to propose a motion to remove the number 2 out of the motion as proposed.
So you're proposing an amendment to delete paragraph 2?
I am. Yes, thank you.
Is there a seconder for that? Trustee Stelk, do you wish to speak further to that, Trustee Van Well?
I think just based on the information that the superintendent provided, it is an unreasonable thing to have in the motion.
Thank you. Trustee Holman on the amendment?
Yes, the letters or the emails to graduates could be the graduates of 2022. They don't have to be the ones that have left from last year. And it could also be, or certainly hear from staff whether the opportunity from any folks who had moved on, whether that could be part of an opportunity to reach out. Perhaps that's not, but the graduating class of 2022 could certainly be included in 2. So, and I'd like a ruling as well whether this motion, which was seconded, removing as a portion of it, whether that is in order. It strikes me that that is that if the member isn't supportive, she should vote against it, as opposed to amending, which is taking away a good portion of it. Is that in order?
My ruling is that I accepted the proposed amendment as consistent in proposed deleting part of the motion. Trustee Van Well found herself in the position of saying, I think there's portions she can support, but she can't support this for the reason given by the superintendent. It's entirely in order. Is there any further debate or discussion on the proposed amendment to delete paragraph 2? I'll put the question then. All those in favor of the proposed amendment to delete paragraph 2, please raise your hands. I'm counting 4. Opposed? I'm counting 1. The amendment, I'm counting 2. Thank you. The amendment carries and paragraph 2 is deleted. Now, we have a motion by trustee Holman. It's been amended with the amendment provided by trustee Martin, which was adding a 3, which will now be a 2 because 2 is out. Trustee Holman speaking to the amended motion.
I'd like to call the question.
All right, all those in favor of moving the, sorry, we need a 2/3 majority for this. Actually, I don't see anyone else on the list, trustee Holman. So I'm quite prepared to go to the vote now. You don't have to call the question. Trustees, do you understand what the proposed motion as amended is?
If we could just hear it one more time, that would be helpful.
All right. Do you have it, Ms. Glancy?
Which one am I reading? I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time.
What we have is trustee Holman's motion.
Yeah, and then am I reading trustee McMurphy's motion amendment?
No, that failed. Let me see how I can do with it. Whereas strategic planning is a participant.
No, not the whereas. It's just
I have that one. I have that, Tim. Sorry, okay. That the board through SPAC include as part of the communication and engagement process.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah. An invitation to all administrators, teachers, parents, students, unions, partner groups, and other community members, local service providers, and education experts to provide input on strategic priorities by way of online meeting forums and website surveys.
Yes. And then the other part of it is the amendment provided by trustee Martin,
which is interviews with representatives with above groups with a panel consisting of trustees, district staff, teachers, support staff, parents, administrators, where capacity and budget is available and deemed a priority by the board.
Okay, that's the motion. Trustee Stelk?
Yes, I'm going to vote against the motion because I do feel that it's too prescriptive. I feel it's too soon. And I'm also very concerned about the WSANH consultation.
Thank you. There should be no further debate at this point because trustee Holman was prepared to move the previous question. I had no other speakers. I said I was going to the vote now, and trustee McMurphy asked that it be read. So thank you, trustees. I'm putting the question now. All in favor of the motion as amended, please raise your hands. I see 3 opposed. 4. The motion as amended is defeated. Now, I have trustee McMurphy.
Could I try another motion, please?
Yes.
That the superintendent be requested to revise the strategic plan process to reflect, can't read my writing, to reflect the, to include a role for trustees as in the to include a role for trustees on the SPAC committee, particularly with regard and/or the chair, I'm doing this on the fly, and/or the chair, particularly with regard to the WSANH-NASAN consultations.
Do you have that, Ms. Glancy?
No.
Sorry, I was on mute, so you don't hear me typing. Yeah, I think so. I'll read it back. That the superintendent. Do you want me to read it back? Sorry.
Please.
Yes. That the superintendent be requested to revise the strategic plan process to include a role for trustees on SPAC, which would be spelled out.
No, sorry, the SPAC trustees. Include a role for the SPAC trustees.
Okay, for SPAC trustees, particularly with regard to the WSANH.
Sorry, and sorry, it was the SPAC trustees and/or the chair.
Okay, particularly with regard to the WSANH consultations?
Yes.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Trustee Seltzer, do you wish to speak to it, trustee McMurphy?
Yes, the superintendent did acknowledge in response to earlier concerns raised that there was no intention to exclude the trustees from the process. But when you look at that list, you don't see it explicitly, and I think it does need to be there, particularly, as I said, with regard to the consultations with the Wasanic Nation. I think to have particularly the chair involved in those consultations would be a mark of respect that would probably be well received. So I think it'd be important to do that. And I think that as the superintendent made the reference to the trustees being included in the school consultations, I think that our 3 trustees on the SPAC committee could, having, they've got the knowledge, they've had the work, they've been doing the work rather, and I think that they could take turns going, I'm not suggesting all 3 of them go to every meeting, but at least one of the 3 could turn up at the various consultations that are proposed in that plan. I think it's important to have the board representatives in a place where they can not so much present the board perspective, but listen with the board perspective and clarify where necessary from the board perspective. So I think it's really important that the trustees maintain a role in this whole thing, so that when it comes back to the board, we know that there's been at least the eyes of at least one trustee through all these discussion and information gathering processes.
Thank you. Trustee Stelk? No? Trustee Holman?
Yes, thank you. I'd like us to reflect on, I believe, what has been offered as feedback from a member of Wasanic attending our SPAC meetings, which is that as an observation, the sort of rules and regulations may get in the way sometimes of forming the good relationships. And I think that having moved from the board consultation that was all board trustees involved in the last strategic plan to a fewer number, not all, I think it's 3 if I'm not mistaken. I think that is not conducive to extending respect and opportunity for all members of the board to interact, to show respect, to build those relationships, and to hear the feedback directly. As you know, Central Saanich is within its municipal boundaries, has both Sartlip and Sayout, to which I represent, and I feel that this motion is exclusive, or is creating kind of a group within a group, whereas the School Act and our policies are more expansive and inclusive. And I think particularly as we're making plans for strategic planning and building and developing relationships and working on reconciliation, I believe that all members of the board should be involved in the opportunities for consultation and extension of board to Wasanic relations. So I speak against it, and I hope others will as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other hands, and so I'm Trustee Martin. I actually do see your hand, I think.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I do support that board to board with the Wasanic Nation. It would be excellent to meet. And I support that intention of Trustee Holman. Just a point of clarification, in our last strat plan, it was a very similar structure to this one. There were 3 trustees that were involved, and they were involved in different committees, and other board members could come in, and they were part of the large public consultation, but not all 7 board members were involved in the strat planning. It was in the similar structure. Strat plan committee brought information back to the board, and the board overall made a decision. So I just wanted to be clear that all 7 trustees were not involved last time.
Right. Thank you. Trustee Silzer? You're muted.
Sorry. Chair, I speak in favor of the motion. I do believe that this is in reference to this motion is in reference to the superintendent's proposed consultation plan. And I agree that this would make specific a role for trustees in that. I don't think that this needs to preclude the board meeting board to board with the Wasanich People's, the school board, and that there will be other opportunities for us to, as Trustee Holman said, break bread with the Wasanich Board of Education as part of this whole process. But for specifically moving forward as soon as we can and as productively as possible, I support this, and then I would like to make a motion after this.
Thank you. I see no further hands, and so I will put the question on the McMurphy motion. Trustees, are you clear what it is? All right. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. I see 5 at least. Opposed? Thank you. The motion is carried. Trustee Silzer?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move that the board approve the superintendent's proposed consultation plan as set out in his slide presentation. And
is there a second?
Sorry.
Is there a seconder? Trustee Stelk? Trustee Silzer?
Well, if we could look at it again, Superintendent, could you please screen share with the actual, that's it, the consultation approach. If indeed there's urgency to consult with the First Nation first, this would be the groundwork at the first October, November activities, approaches. And then in November, we would have an opportunity, and the SPAC committee would have an opportunity to plan future consultation sessions. Now, I think I've already expressed that I think we've got the basics. We know why we're there and what we're asking people along the lines of the themes, the identified themes. And we know, generally, we do know who we want to talk with, and who we need input from. This consultation approach sets out the parties who would be consulted, and generally when, leaving room for staff to be flexible. And it would, I think it makes sense for going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Martin, please.
Thank you. I don't feel that I appreciate the intention of Trustee Silzer and my other colleagues in moving this forward, but Trustee Silzer, you said we know what questions and we know who to ask, and we know, but there is the framing of those questions. They're how they're asked, to whom they're asked, and I think the board needs input into that. It's not just that we send people away to do that and develop it. We saw in neighboring districts when communication went out that had gone through a filter and it hadn't gone to the board, that it came back in terms of really, really harming relationships. So if this motion was to proceed, I would say it proceeds with caution because there's a lot of detail on the communication side, the messaging, the preamble, the reason to why, and that we do need to keep these as open as possible. Yes, the data shows that these are our 3 areas of concern, and the board, the Strat Planning Committee and the board has determined that, but there also is that part to the motion the board put forward, the majority of the board put forward, that we have to be open to other feedback from our stakeholders in our community. And so there's going to be importance about the way that question is asked, so we don't presuppose some answers. So I say we're not there in terms of the communication side of this. We may have a structure and a roadmap, but I think we need to see the road signs and we need to have a map in terms of our communication before we could adopt this.
Trustee McMurphy.
I agree with Trustee Martin and Trustee Silzer. I think that, and you wonder how I'm going to square that circle, but I think the important line in the proposal from the superintendent is January. Community consultation, various options dependent on board decision in December. So I'm not seeing, maybe I'm reading this incorrectly, but there's additional consultation recommendations from the board for the board to decide on in November. There's work being done by SPAC to plan future consultation sessions, including public community partners for later in the fall or January. I think that Trustee Martin's comments about making sure that the board has its imprimatur on this process are important, but I think the process itself is a good foundation to build on, particularly with all the layers that we've also just added, which actually flesh out kind of the, you know, the question there, the part that says various options dependent on board decisions. I think the board made that decision a bit prematurely, but anyway, it's there now. So I think I think the Victoria's, Trustee Martin's concerns are somewhat alleviated by the fact that we have also passed a motion saying we want trustee voice in the processes more than is reflected in the actual document.
Thank you. Trustee Holman.
Yes, thank you. I believe that the process that has been outlined in the superintendent's report is a good overview, but it doesn't provide all of the details that I think I would like to see in what an engagement and a communication plan would look like. I'd like to see it fleshed out more. So I won't be supporting the motion at this time. I think that looking back to our consultants' presentation around strategic planning, the ministry presentation around strategic planning, I think there's additional work that could be done before the board gives its sort of support in moving it forward. Not to say that it's not a good overview, but I think that there are more details that need to be fleshed out, like the framing of the questions, the way in which it's received, among other things. So I'm not supportive at this time.
Thank you. Trustee Silzer, for the second time.
Yes, thanks. I would just like to add that I really like the fact that in the superintendent's plan, there's involvement of administrators, there's involvement of senior staff, and there would also be, now that we've passed that motion about trustees being involved in the advantage consultation, that it starts, we need to start everybody being involved in this process, because somehow it's got, the momentum has to start. And I think if we wait another month or two, we're wasting time, and we have to start somewhere, and this looks like a really good place to start, and we will get to the details. And I think partly we've just started the school year, and I think to be fair to our staff, they have been working on many other things at the same time as this. So I'd say let's just, that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you. I'm on the list next. as well. I intend to support this motion. I agree with many of the comments that have been made. I think that the plan as presented in the superintendent's report is a good start. I am also comforted by the motion passed regarding trustee and/or chair involvement with the Wasanich people particularly. And I have faith that the necessary details will come about either through our skilled staff or through SPAC or through the trustee involvement as it's necessary. Without repeating it, I don't see the need to prescript every little detail at this point, especially at this point, with respect to questions and so forth. We're going to learn things as this consultation process is undertaken, and it may affect how we approach another group. We may not ask everybody the same question, or we may. It's going to be a developing process, like the treatment of COVID, as far as I can see. So for those reasons, I intend to support the motion. There are no other speakers on the list. I'm prepared to put the question on the motion. Moved by Trustee Selzer, second by Trustee Stell.
Sorry, Chair Dunford, I was on the list. I had my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Trustee Martin. You'd already spoken. I thought that was it. Okay, Trustee Martin for the second time.
Thank you. I just really want to underline, this is not for me, it's not trusting staff. There has been a tremendous amount of work put into this. We're at a really important juncture. And I think that I would just say that if we don't tease out the details, not to be prescriptive, we actually risk wasting our staff's precious time. Because if this starts to go in a certain way and trustee goes, oh, no, that's not the way we were expecting, it's a real waste. So what I'm thinking is, if the communication and everything is up front, and I'm not talking down to the details, but the intention and kind of the framing of this, we essentially could save staff a lot of time and we could, and speaking to what Trustee Silzer said, we could gain a momentum. And this isn't about second guessing staff. It's actually about the board in this process getting clear about what it is we need, what we're hoping to achieve, and supporting our staff to be able to know that, and that will frame the way this goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to put the question now. All in favor of the motion presented by Trustee Silzer and seconded by Trustee Stelk. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Could we hear the motion? Sorry, Chair, could we hear the motion?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, that the board approve the superintendent's consultation approach as presented in the superintendent's report.
Okay. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4.
5.
5?
5.
Who's the fifth?
McMurphy, Silzer, Stelk, Dunford, and Venwell.
All right. I didn't see Trustee McMurphy's hand. I'm sorry. Apologies. Opposed? I see 1.
2.
2. The motion is carried. All right. Trustees, is there anything further with respect to this issue before we return to Superintendent's report? Trustee Holman?
Thank you. Yes. So with respect to the superintendent's report on the strategic planning, it's my understanding that a report from the district to the province on our strategic plan is due by the end of September. And I'm just wondering, is that report coming to the board, or what is the status of reporting to the ministry on strategic plan?
Superintendent?
That's indicated within our FESL report that the board is currently updating its strategic plan, and so that's in the preamble to the FESL report.
Thank you. Superintendent, then, would you please carry on with your report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that takes us right into FESL, the Framework for Enhancing Student Learning. Just a few slides on this. There is a separate document provided to trustees, staff, and partners that contained our FESL report. Interestingly, as we began our process in the strat plan, we were also engaging, even though we didn't know it at the time, in our FESL consultations as well, because they really are two parallel projects. One, a strategic plan looking forward, and the FESL report looking from the present and backwards in time, but still looking at the same data, still involving the same partners. This report has been in the planning stages for many years from the province. There used to be a superintendent's accountability report that was created every year. It was more of a compliance document. That stopped a number of years ago, and they've been working on revamping what that looks like. This is the year that the provincial government is implementing it across the province. Last year, there were a handful of districts piloting it, and this is the first year for all 60 school districts. The learning goals that must be embedded within the FESL report must be based on evidence and data from a variety of sources. That can be provincial, district, local, school, etc. And so we've done that as we've gone through our strategic plan consultation, looked at those very data sets. The goal of the FESL report is to have districts continually monitor and revise, but also submit an annual report to the province between June and September every year, talking about their progress and if there's any revisions to what they are doing. So it does go hand in hand with the board's own strategic plan. Within FESL are three main focus areas: intellectual development, human social development, and career development. And in the plan that, and there must be a multi-year strategic plan as part of it. And that, as I said, has been indicated in our FESL report that the board is currently working on their new 5-year plan. So what are our FESL learning goals? Under these three areas: intellectual development, to improve literacy outcomes for all students, remembering that the correlation between student success and early literacy is clear. It's essential that literacy instruction is prioritized here in our district. Under career development and intellectual development, to improve the outcomes and opportunities for all Indigenous learners. It is our moral imperative to strive for a system here in Saanich where all Indigenous students are educated without encountering barriers or systemic racism, to graduate with dignity, purpose, and options. And our third area under our FESL report is on the Human and Social Development Index, which is to improve mental health and wellness for all students. And yes, there is a direct correlation to what we are contemplating for the board's next strategic plan as well, too. Mental health being a critical part of the FESL report here, where schools play that critical community connection for families to provide students with access to strategies and some services for mental wellness, where we have a role to help promote things like resilience and supportive settings and address potential barriers to positive mental health. And so the full report with various data sources, both provincial and local, graduation rates, FSA results, literacy results, Indigenous students, non-Indigenous students, students who are at risk, students who are under provincial care, etc. We've given a spread of data. Certainly it's not the thousands and thousands of points of data, that's not the point, but we took representative data to represent why these are areas where we're seeing that we need to focus as a school district. And so my recommendation to the board tonight is that the board approve the framework for enhancing student learning report as submitted by myself, and that the report be forwarded to the Ministry of Education. We have a deadline of September 30th to do that. I will take questions on the report if there are any, but that concludes my presentation for this evening, Mr. Chair, and of course, the last part I'm certainly open to questions on at this point.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the superintendent on FESL, or alternatively, is there a trustee prepared to move the staff recommendation approving the report and forwarding it to the ministry?
I'll move it.
Moved by trustee Stelk, second by trustee Van Well. Trustee Stelk, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I don't think I need to speak to it. I think it's being described eloquently by the superintendent. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. I see no other hands, and so I'm prepared to put the question on the motion as recommended to approve the report and forward it to the ministry. All in favor, please raise your hands. Opposed? Thank you. The motion's carried. Thank you, Superintendent, for that. Is there anything further in your report?
I don't think so. I took the floor a lot tonight. I think that's it for my report this evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Quite all right. It's necessary sometimes, and you did a magnificent job. Thank you. Moving then, trustees, to committee reports. First, the Education Directions Committee with Committee Chair Trustee Van Well, please.
Thank you, Chair. At committee last week, we had a couple of presentations. The first one was we had Assistant Superintendent Mackenzie and Director of Instruction Braniff talk to us about the new EA dual credit program. And I'll just go through my notes here. So this program supports the direction provided by the board in 2019 to prioritize the recruitment and retention of EAs. And so this program is being developed in association with Vancouver Island University. The university will provide a post-secondary instructor who will be responsible for the curriculum, instruction, and assessment. It will take place at ILC, and the program is being offered to Saanich students, primarily grade 12 students who are interested in the field of human and social development, as well as an opportunity for adult students from neighboring Indigenous communities and the broader Saanich Peninsula. And this program is scheduled to start in semester 2. Okay, and then I have an item for recommendation in regards to mental health programs in Saanich. So the motion, the committee recommends, and I, Trustee Van Well, move that the board encourage the Ministry of Education to continue funding for mental health supports.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Trustee Stelk, do you wish to speak to it, Trustee Van Well?
Yeah, I do. So this came about, Director of Instruction Branoff provided us with some information on mental health in our schools, the things that we are doing in the schools. And and she also provided us with suggestions for community advocacy. And this was this motion is a result of that, and we are would like it to, show the Ministry of Education how we used the funding that we have received in the past, and with the hopes that it would continue.
Thank you. Are there any other trustees who wish to comment? I will offer a brief comment that coincidentally, just after committee day, Tracy Loeffler, who is a BC STA director, who is our VISTA liaison, contacted me, as she often does, asking if there are issues that she should bring to the BC STA board meeting the next week. And based on the support of this issue at the committee, I passed that on to her, and she responded and said this is a theme that they are hearing from many districts. The board itself is completely alive to it, and we should be reassured that if this motion carries, well, regardless of whether we pass this motion, BC STA is going to be advocating on behalf of the 60 districts in that regard. So we're not alone, folks. It's obviously a very prominent and timely theme. All right, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. Opposed? The motion's carried. Thank you, Trustee Van Well. Anything further?
Yes, I just wanted to touch on two items for information that came through this committee. We had a revised 2021-2022 calendar, which, as you mentioned, as the chair mentioned in his report about Truth and Reconciliation, the statutory holiday for September 30th was added to it. And as well, there was a revised 2021-2022 non-instructional early dismissal and exam dates schedule shown to us. And that is my report.
Thank you. Let's move then, please, to item 10, Finance, Facilities and Technology. Thank you, Committee Chair Martin.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so it was a very hefty agenda, and so thanks to the Secretary Treasurer Reid and to our finance team, because it was obviously there had been a lot of work that had gone into it. So there were no presentations or questions. Moving on, the first item for recommendation is the 2020-21 financial statements. And so as was discussed at the Finance Committee, we have received the results of our KPMG audit. And through that, there were recommendations just as a part of the wrapping up of the financial statements. And so the first motion is the committee recommends, and I, Trustee Martin, move that the board approve the internal restrictions of accumulated operating surplus as presented in Note 12 in the 2020-2021 financial statements.
Seconder. Trustee McMurphy. Do you wish to speak to it further, Trustee Martin?
No, I think it was very well explained in the briefing package, and I'm sure that if people have questions, probably more appropriately could be directed through to the Secretary Treasurer.
I'm not seeing any hands, Trustee Martin, thank you. So I'm prepared to put the question. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Thank you, the motion is carried.
And so then the second message from second motion from under the 2020-2021 financial statements, the committee recommends, and I, Trustee Martin, move that the board approve transfer of $82,250 from accumulated operating surplus to local capital as presented in Schedule 1 in the 2020-21 financial statements.
Second, Trustee McMurphy. Trustee Martin.
Again, if anyone has questions, Secretary Treasurer Reid, I'm sure could fill in the details, but it was explained in the excellent briefing memo.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
And the third motion coming under the 2020-2021 financial statements, the committee recommends, and I, Trustee Martin, move that the board approve the 2020-2021 financial statements.
Second, Trustee Van Wel. Trustee Martin.
Any questions can be directed through to Secretary Treasurer Reid, but it was all discussed at committee and in the excellent briefing note.
Yes, it was, and it was. And I'm not seeing any questions. All in favor? Opposed? The motion's carried.
Okay, and then the fourth motion, the committee recommends, and I, Trustee Martin, move that the board express appreciation to the Secretary Treasurer and the finance staff on the receipt of the recent unqualified and complimentary auditor's report.
Second, Trustee Van Wel. Trustee Martin.
There is we see the end auditor's report, but there is work that is done every day, every week, every month by our finance team to support us being in compliance and managing a significant amount of money that has tremendous operational impact. And so we as a board are very grateful, and our auditor reassured us that we have an absolutely stellar team, and so that we are very grateful.
Thank you. I can't imagine any negative votes on this, but let's see. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried unanimously.
And then the fifth motion related to the financial statements and the final one, the committee recommends, and I, Trustee Martin, move that the board thank Lenora Lee of KPMG for her years of careful guidance and oversight of the School District 63 audit.
Second, Trustee Van Wel. Trustee Martin?
And just as it was discussed at the committee, KPMG has been our auditors for a number of years, and we are now moving over to the oversight of, as part of just a process within the province, to the Officer of the Auditor General. And so our audit next year will be overseen by the Officer of the Auditor General. And so we just wanted to acknowledge our appreciation for Ms. Lee and her years of leadership and support to this district.
Mr. Reid, how many years has she been leading the audit team?
Good question. I don't know the exact number of years offhand, but I do know it is more than 15 years.
Very long time. Very good service. Thank you. Trustees, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Trustee Martin.
So we then had a discussion and an opportunity to discuss a motion that the discussion was led by the Secretary Treasurer Reid on there is a tapestry that was done by McTavish Elementary students that was given to the Sydney Museum with a memorandum of understanding. And it's coming to a time where it's going to need some restoration work, and that had sparked the City Museum reaching out to our Secretary Treasurer, and to do the work will be very costly, and I think they were needing some clarity in terms of whether or not the district would hand that over. We were assisted in that committee and in that conversation by two staff from the City Museum, and that was very helpful. And out of that conversation and the work of the prior conversations with the Secretary Treasurer, the following motion has been developed, and it was changed at committee, and this reflects the discussion at the committee. The committee recommends, and I, Trustee Martin, move that the school district tapestry depicting the historical settler farms of the Saanich Peninsula be donated to the Sydney Museum, with the expectation the museum will share the full history of the Saanich Peninsula relating to the Wasanich people and European settlement as depicted in the tapestry.
Thank you. Second? Trustee Van Well. Trustee Martin, do you wish to speak further to the motion?
No, Secretary Treasurer Reid, is there anything you want to add that I've missed?
No, I think you outlined it well. Nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any hands, and so I'll put the question. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? The motion is carried.
All right, so moving on to item 3, the Children's Development Center Neighborhood Learning Center lease bylaw. The motion is that the board approve the Children's Development Center Neighborhood Learning Center lease bylaw as presented. And so there is a first reading. The committee recommends, and I, Trustee Martin, move that the board approve the first reading of the School District number 63, Saanich, Children's Development Center Neighborhood Learning Center lease bylaw 2021.
Second, Trustee Van Well. Trustee Martin, do you wish to speak to this?
No, again, the Secretary Treasurer did an excellent briefing note, and there was also, he spoke to this. I think it's very straightforward. We're at a time now where we need to have a framework, and we have to have an understanding.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? The motion's carried.
All right, moving on to the second reading. The committee recommends, and I, Trustee Martin, move that the board approve the second reading of the School District number 63, Saanich, Children's Development Center Neighborhood Learning Center lease bylaw 2021.
Second, Trustee Van Well. All in favor? Opposed? The motion's carried.
Okay, so I'm moving to a motion to read for a third time. Chair, remind me, does this have to be unanimous?
If we're going to adopt the bylaw this evening, yes, this third reading motion must be passed unanimously.
Okay. So motion to read for a third time. The committee recommends, and I, Trustee Martin, move that the board approve the reading of the School District Number 63, Saanich, Children's Development Center, Neighborhood Learning Center Lease Bylaw 2021 at this board meeting for a third time.
Second, Trustee Van Well. Trustees, all in favor, bearing in mind what was said? Any opposition? Carried unanimously. That's the spirit, folks.
And moving on to the third and final reading of the Children's Development Center Neighborhood Learning Center Lease Bylaw. The committee recommends, and I, Trustee Martin, move that the board approve the third and final reading, pass and adopt the School District Number 63 Saanich Children's Development Center Neighborhood Learning Center Lease Bylaw 2021.
Second, Trustee Van Well. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Okay, and then moving on, there was a discussion about our business company, and again, it was supported by briefing materials, and the motion coming out of the committee is the committee recommends, and I, Trustee Martin, move that the board direct staff to commence the process of dissolving the School District Number 63 business company and its subsidiary companies.
Second, Trustee Van Well. Would you like to speak to this, Trustee Martin?
Basically what has happened is over a period of time, the landscape has changed. This has come before the board before, and the Secretary Treasurer can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that it was discussed and deferred to this year to be revisited again. And so this has been in front of the board, and it's coming to a time where it's not able to provide a service and it's not financially sustainable. And so the Secretary Treasurer is recommending that this is a good time to wind it up. In putting it on pause or even putting it into a kind of a holding position is still going to cost us legal and some financial costs. And so that this seems to be the natural time to wrap it up. Secretary Treasurer Reid, anything to add?
Yeah, thank you. The business company was formed in 2014, and it actually was successful in what it set out to do. Unfortunately, in 2018, there was a change in ministry policy which revoked the business company's authority to deliver ministry courses offshore, and that really limited the benefit of having a business company, and it limited the profitability of the operations it then continued with, which were very limited. So there really isn't a sustainable path forward for the business company. And if changes do occur to ministry policy in the future, the board, could choose to create another one. It doesn't make sense to hold the structure pending future changes, because it does cost money, regardless of whether it's active or not. There's requirements for audits and other legal requirements.
Thank you, Trustee Holman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm in support of the recommendation. The one question that came up at committee, I'm just wondering whether there's any further information, and that was whether the coursework that was developed by the company and used overseas, whether there's any opportunity for sale of that product as a way to offset some of the losses of the company. Is that something that might be pursued, or is that not an option?
Mr. Reid?
Yeah, so we don't feel that there's likely a market for those materials, but we do think there is value in the course materials for us that we may consider how that material will be used going forward. It would have to be used in a different way, because we aren't authorized without a business company to deliver course material offshore for fee, whether it's ministry accredited or not. But we do own that material because the board owns the business company, and we will consider how we can use it going forward.
Trustee McMurphy.
Thank you, Chair. Readers of the minutes will be surprised to find the name McMurphy neither mover nor seconders. I'll have to have my positive vote recorded. But I just wanted to go on record as saying that even though I am in favor of this motion wholeheartedly, I do want to offer a note of respect and appreciation for the staff who've worked so hard to keep this operation going over the years. I do appreciate their efforts, even though I am opposed to the concept. So I want my positive vote recorded.
Not necessary. Thank you, Trustee McMurphy. All right, I'll put the question on the motion as moved by Committee Chair Martin. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. The motion is carried. Anything further, Trustee Martin?
Yes, just I'm going to hand this one across to the Secretary Treasurer Reid. So there we discussed the Qualsit traffic study, and there's been a tremendous amount of work done by North Saanich. And I think just Secretary Treasurer Reid, there is a council meeting coming up that Secretary Treasurer Reid and I believe some of our trustees will be attending, and that's to answer any questions on behalf of the district for this traffic study. But anything else you want to add, Secretary Treasurer Reid?
Yeah, I would just add that we we really appreciate what the District of North Saanich did with this traffic study. It was very, very comprehensive, a lot of consultation, and I think the report's over 150 pages long. So it really looked very closely at the issues, and there are recommendations for addressing the concerns that were identified. The staff at North Saanich are currently preparing the report that will go to North Saanich Council, I believe, in October, and there will be an opportunity for to see that when the recommendations come from staff to council.
Great, thank you. And then I'm just going to chair. There's just the White Road project, and Secretary Treasurer Reid, just any quick update on that one?
Yeah, so last spring, following our first unsuccessful application for funding to develop an early learning center on the White Road property, the board passed a motion to work in consultation with Beacon Community Services on developing a program and developing the funding application, and that reflected feedback from the funding program that basically made it clear that our application would really benefit from having an experienced partner work with us in developing the proposal. And just a few weeks ago, the Ministry of Children and Families confirmed that, or they announced that they're opening up the next round of funding. And we're now working with Beacon Community Services, and we actually met with them earlier today and had a discussion about the plans. We're working with Beacon Community Services to develop a plan that will come up for the board in October, so that we're in a position to submit a funding application by the deadline, which is mid-November.
Thanks, Secretary Treasurer. And then the final item, and then is we did discuss what the district does and is able to do in the event that a student or family has technology needs. And there was a great conversation to hear about process, and there was some conversation. Obviously, we've got a limited capacity, and there was a discussion about, maybe this needs to be a thread of the budget advisory, that it becomes a conversation about clearly, what are the ways in which the board can support on the ground families where there's significant inequities, and we know technology is becoming one of those. And so there was a discussion about, communication, commitment, and capacity to be able to continue to do our very, very best in supporting our families in all areas of our district. And that ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Holman.
Thank you, Chair. I just had one question about the Kelsit traffic study, and when I look at that, the 27% indicate it's the distance from, I guess, home to school that is the factor in terms of parents driving kids to school. And I know we can't, change the location of home or school, but I know the question came up at committee in terms of the busing, whether there are any opportunities to expand busing for students, particularly, when distance is being one of the primary factors. Did we, I guess, what would be the process to kind of review that in conjunction with the congestion there, or has that been done and we're doing all that we can, or will it be reviewed on an ongoing basis, particularly if numbers continue to grow? So what's the bus solution, I guess, to this, if any?
Is that for you, Mr. Reid?
I think so. Yeah. The traffic study itself did not look at opportunities or options for changing busing. The busing that is in place for Qualsit and for all our schools is reflective of walk limits. It's reflective of other considerations like traffic, safe routes to school, etc. And there were no significant opportunities to kind of improve access to busing that we could identify. There are a significant number of students that already come to Qualsit on the bus. In terms of traffic safety, it's an issue at all of our elementary schools, not just Qualsit. And I would actually say Qualsit's probably not the most concerning elementary school we have. I would, we're probably more worried about Prospect Lake Elementary, and we have concerns as well with Lochside Elementary that probably rival that of Qualsit. But what we the reason that we are focusing on Qualsit is a year or so ago when we met with the school and we met with the RCMP liaison officer, and we met with staff from the District of Saanich and started having discussions. We felt there were real opportunities to make improvements to the situation at Qualsit, because a lot of the issues are behavioral, speeding, parking where one shouldn't park, pulling U-turns at the front of the parking lot, and so there a lot of the issues that we identified we felt could be addressed through traffic calming and other measures. And so I don't think we would necessarily look at significantly enhancing busing to Qualsit. Because a lot of the issues we see in Qualsit, we see in a lot of our schools in terms of walk limits and busing, etc.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Trustee Martin, for your report. Let's go to the Policy Development Committee with Committee Chair Stelk, please.
Thank you, Chair. There are two items under my report. The first one is Policy 26, which is online learning. The notice of motion was given for this policy and at the May 19th board meeting, and I'm bringing it forward now. The committee recommends, and I, Trustee Stelk, move. As a requested notice of motion has been provided, I, Trustee Stelk, move the following motion, that Policy 26, online learning, be approved.
Seconder? Trustee Holman? Any comment, Trustee Stelk?
I don't think so. We went over this in a lot of detail in the spring. So it's just coming forward for approval.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried.
And the second one is the SOGI policy, sexual orientation and gender identity, which was in policy and then ended up in admin procedure, and we're moving it back into policy. There was a discussion that we, the notice, the policy is getting close to where we want it, or is where we want it, but we would like to broaden it. So we've added a diversity and inclusion to future agenda items. So at this point, recognizing that we'd like to have a SOGI policy in policy, I, Trustee Selk, provide notice that at the December 1st, 2021 public meeting of the Board of Education, I will move the following motion that policy 27, sexual orientation and gender identity, be approved.
Thank you. So that's noticed. Anything further in your report?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Trustee Holman?
Do we need to vote on that motion that Trustee Stelk just read from Policy Committee? Do we need to second and vote it? No?
No, that's not a motion, Trustee Holman. That's giving notice of the motion that will come back to the board in 2 months' time. That'll be where you can second it for us. Thank you, Trustee Stelk. Item 13 is reports from trustee representatives. If there are there any folks tonight? Trustee Holman?
Just briefly, the Victoria Family Court Youth Justice Committee met today. They're continuing their work to modernize the governance model, and the CRD will be, in its governance committee, will be reviewing a bylaw that would be creating a commission for this group. So our work continues, and the other word that I'll say is that because the requisition of just over $17,000 was unspent during COVID because of not a lot of opportunity to grant that money. The expectation is that we will have close to double that for the coming year, and so I'll be bringing word about the opportunities for application to grant for that committee at a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Holman. Any other reports from trustees? Trustee McMurphy? No? Yes? No? Thank you. Let's move then to item 15, which 14, there is no correspondence. Correct, Mr. Reid?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, thank you. So let's move to item 15. This is the second question period afforded to our partners and our public who may be in attendance. If there are any questions, I'm sure, Ms. Glancy, if there are any, you can help me with this because I'm not sure I'm seeing everybody.
I will try, yes. Yeah. I don't see any.
All right. All right. Thank you. Moving then to item 16, other business as submitted. And the first item is the committee board meeting format for the 2021-2022 school year. Superintendent Eberwin, if you could lead us in this, please. And you're muted at this point.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I provided a briefing note for the board's information. This is something that I spoke to briefly earlier, but thought there's a request to have something in writing. And so I've outlined in the briefing note the background around board and committee meetings, which of course trustees are very aware of, but also provided some information around the current situation with regards to communicable disease guidelines in K-12 settings and our own communicable disease plan, which was linked for you from our website. The board my recommendation is the board needs to make a decision on how they will be conducting both their formal board committee days and board meetings, specifically public board meetings, in the foreseeable future under the current COVID conditions. For consideration, I've provided 4 options for the board: full virtual meetings, which we're doing this evening, as option 1. Option 2, have a return to our full in-person meetings of staff, trustees, and partners and visitors in our regular boardroom. Option 3, having those full meetings at ILC Saanich. And option 4, a blended meeting with staff and trustees physically present, yet broadcasting using the MS Teams platform in a different way than what we've seen in the past. I won't go through the considerations for each of them. They are in the briefing note, but I'll certainly take questions at this time if there are any.
Trustee McMurphy?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the superintendent. The way the options have been set out, they seem to be all or nothing, but I'm assuming there could be a combination. Like, for example, you could have option 1 for committee day and option 2 for board meeting or something like that. You could mix and match.
Yes, absolutely.
They don't have to be exclusively all one or all the other.
That's
okay,
correct.
thanks.
Just the options were meant to be location and format, but certainly the board could design any combination that they wanted.
Thank you.
Trustee Holman?
Thank you, and thank you to the superintendent for the briefing note. I think it was very comprehensive and sets out the options and pros and cons. The one question for me, and I'm cognizant that the format of our board meeting agenda may not allow for this, or maybe there's an exception, but given that we've got our partner groups with us this evening, and the options before us involve their participation and how that would be as well, I'd love to hear from our partner groups if they have a preference in terms of whether the blend of meetings with some visual or virtual members participating with a smaller, maybe trustee and staff in a meeting. I'm just curious whether they have preference to the options.
I will provide that opportunity, Trustee Holman, after trustees have spoken. Trustee Silser, please.
Thank you, Chair. Given that the board passed a motion in January this year that board meetings will be recorded and archived on the website. Through you, Chair, to the superintendent, is the blended format recordable?
It uses the MS Teams backbone, so yes, my understanding is it is. But I do have to defer to the fact that we haven't been formally trained on it yet, but it does offer the same services as MS Teams. So my preliminary answer is yes, it is recordable.
So I would like to make a motion.
Yes.
Chair?
Yes.
I move that at this time during COVID, in these COVID times, that the board adopt the blended meetings approach until further notice.
So the adopted blended meeting approach described in the superintendent's briefing note of September 7, 2021. Would that suffice, Trustee Silser?
Yes, thank you.
And is there a seconder for that motion? Trustee Van Well, do you wish to speak to it, Trustee Silser?
Yes, I think because we've had this last 18 months or so with the MS Teams, I think there's great value in continuing to have the remote opportunity for the public to attend. And I believe that since we're expecting teachers, all staff, all students, the executive to be meeting in person, I think it makes sense from many perspectives that the trustees attend in-person meetings safely, and with the flexibility that if they are unwell or they have very strong feelings about protecting their own health, that they would have the flexibility to attend by MS Teams as well. And I'm assuming that that's also possible. That of course, it would be more convenient to have trustees and senior staff in one room so that there's engagement with a screen for the public and the partners, and trustees and senior staff at either. Oh, I guess it would have to be the school board office. But I think that option gives the most flexibility and respects the fact that I don't think there's any good reason why trustees shouldn't be meeting in person when we expect everybody else to meet in person in the school district. And that's what I have to say for now.
Thank you. Trustee Stelk?
Thank you, Chair. Just in reply to Trustee Siltzer's comment about doing what they're doing in schools, we're not working together on a daily basis, so I would say it's different than school staff. I also, I personally don't want to be compelled to attend a meeting in a room. Everybody's circumstances are different, and we all have different risk. And I think at this time, it's and I would also like to see us all do the same thing. I think that if we're going to be expecting our partners to be online, that we should be online as well. And personally, I would like to be online.
Superintendent, did you have any comment on the issue raised by Trustee Silzer and perhaps by implication by Trustee Stelk as to whether a trustee could opt out of in-person attendance if the blended approach were adopted?
Sure. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The option is available for them to dial in like anybody else could. They would be, if you take a look at the picture in the briefing note, depending on how many people there, that looks like a very popular meeting. I'm not sure our board meetings are necessarily that popular, but they would be one of the faces on that. And so votes and those types of things and conversations would have to include the virtual space as well as the real space. So it would be a little juggling, a little getting used to, but technologically it's certainly possible. It would be up to the board as to whether they wanted to have that option available to individual members.
Okay. Trustee Holman, on the motion?
Yes, and I just, I guess, bring you back to my request to hear from partners on the options before we vote.
I haven't forgotten, Trustee Holman, I haven't forgotten.
Okay. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm challenged to vote without that feedback or input.
We won't vote. Sorry, I apologize I interrupted you. We won't vote without my asking the partners.
Okay, I thought with a motion on the floor, do we table the motion to get input?
No, I'm going to ask them as I promised, as I would.
Thank you.
Any other trustees wish to comment? Now, partners, representatives, you of course do not have the right of debate on this motion, strictly speaking. But in response to Trustee Holman's earlier request, and given the discretion provided to the chair in Policy 9 Board Operations on matters that may prove advantageous for partner input, the board can elect to hear from you. And so I'm offering that opportunity now to partners, not necessarily with respect to Trustee Silzer's motion, but with respect to the general approach you might prefer for these meetings. Does anybody wish to address that from our partners?
Mr. McEwen has sent a message through. He says that he has already expressed his opinion and he prefers option number 4 from the STA's perspective.
Yes, thank you. Any other partners?
QP has left, Chair Dunford, just so you know, they're not on the meeting anymore.
Thank you, Ms. Glancy. All right, I'm not seeing any other hands, trustees, and so I'm prepared to put the question on the motion. All in favor of the motion to adopt the blended approach as moved by Trustee Silzer with reference to the briefing note. All in favor? 2, I'm seeing 3.
I see 3 as well.
Yep. Opposed then? 1, 2, 3.
3.
Then it's defeated. All right, folks, where do we go from here? Any other suggestions? Motions?
I'll put forward a motion, Chair.
Yes, Trustee Stout?
I'll put forward a motion that we adopt for the time being, that we adopt option 1, full virtual meetings to be considered again in January.
So option one, virtual meetings to be reconsidered in January 2022.
Yes.
Is there a seconder for that? Trustee Martin, do you wish to speak to it further, Trustee Stelk?
I just feel, I mean, as I mentioned before, everybody has different risk. I have considerable risk in my life, and I think that, and I also feel that with the partners, I would like it to be a level playing field. I'd like us all to be sort of on the same screen, and I think it's worked relatively well. We have the technology to do this. We're all used to it, and that this makes sense for the short term.
Is there further discussion on the motion for virtual meetings reviewable in January? All right, then I will put the question. All in favor? 3. Opposed? 3. So it's defeated. Okay, folks, maybe we won't have to meet at all. Trustee Holman.
I would move option 2. No, pardon me. Yes, option 2.
Option 2, full in-person meetings in the boardroom with everybody. Is there a seconder?
Sorry, was that 2 or 3?
I'm looking at number 2,
Okay.
which says full in-person meetings, SBO boardroom. Board returns to a format of having in-person committee meetings and public board meetings in the boardroom. All trustees, staff, partners, and visitors would attend in person. Is that your intent, Trustee Holman?
It is, and that's with the understanding that it would be done with the requirements that would be in place, whether that's masking or distancing, that those meetings would be in accord with any guidelines required.
Right, thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? I don't see a seconder, so the motion fails for want of a second. Trustee McMurphy.
I would move that the board operate on option 5, which would be board meetings at the ILC and committee day meetings in the boardroom.
In person?
In person.
Sorry,
Or,
Trustee
I mean,
Trustee McMurphy, can you help me with this?
Yeah.
Is this reflected in the briefing note? I don't think so, right?
no,
Okay, so it's public board meetings at ILC in person?
yes,
And committee day meetings at where?
In person in the boardroom.
All right, is there a seconder for that motion? Trustee Holman. Trustee McMurphy?
If I could speak to it, I think if we had our board meetings at the ILC, we could be physically safely distanced there and still have the option of having access or provide access to public and partners to join us. And the option of having our committee meetings at the boardroom, again, this would provide us for the ability to be physically distanced, as well as provide staff with the opportunity to have a much more flexible day in the sense of them being able to come and go and do other things, as well as, you know, attend committee meetings. I think to have committee meetings in the ILC would be too much of an inconvenience for staff, but I think it would work if we had our committee meetings at the board office and had our public board meetings at the ILC sufficiently distanced that we could be safe.
Thank you.
Although it sure be nice if we could turn the heat up.
Yeah. Trustee Holman, please.
Thank you. Yes. Do we, would this option facilitate the option to virtually attend if trustees chose to do that? And does it also facilitate the commitment to post the meetings online? Would this option enable both of those, online participation by trustees and having the meetings recorded and posted online as we've said we'd like to do?
What's your intent, Trustee McMurphy?
Don't ask me technological questions.
Well, it was really more of a philosophical one. If it were possible for trustees to attend virtually and they wish to opt out and do that, do you see your motion precluding that?
Well, I don't know how it would work. I don't know how we have tried in the past to have people join by conference call when they were unable to come to a meeting for a variety of reasons. We could probably try the conference call approach, but I'm not sure about, including a Teams format for, I don't know how you get the people in the boardroom on the screen for the one person who isn't there, and I don't know how you project the one person who's not there on a screen in the boardroom. That's what I'm saying. Don't ask me technological questions. I don't know the answers.
Maybe a clarifying
The question about whether or not the meetings would still be archived and available, I'm assuming.
Trustee Holman, you wanted to clarify your question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think the question was one of technology's capabilities as opposed to the intent.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, well, before I go to other trustees then, Superintendent, are you able to deal with that?
I can shed some light on that. We've experienced trying to beam somebody in through Teams at ILC just recently for the SPAC committee, and it was very problematic. So I would say the probability of beaming somebody in there is very difficult because of the size and the layout of the room. You'd have to dedicate a computer to the screens, but then that person those people wouldn't be able to see the participants in the room. So that's technologically, I would say no. It's just too complicated and too inefficient, and it's just not going to work and be seamless enough. The option that I think Trustee Holman is asking for is using the blended model in the boardroom where people can see each other and interact, and that's using the MS Teams Rooms platform that you see is outlined in option 4. Trustee McMurphy was talking about the conference call, and we've done that in the past where somebody's put their iPhone on the table and somebody's called in. That would be one method if we weren't using the blended format. But I believe, I don't want to put words in Trustee Holman's mouth, but I think she was asking, could we do the blended format in the boardroom? And of course we could, because that's what the technology is set up for. But that's not what Trustee McMurphy is saying. She's saying we would have in-person meetings there, not have an option of a blended format, which is exactly what option 4 is.
Yeah. Trustee Van Well. You're muted, Terry.
Dang, I thought I did it. Sorry. My question was a lot similar to Trustee Holman's in that I think if we had option 4 for committee days where people who were uncomfortable could call in and we could have our meetings that way, and then have our board meetings, our evening Wednesday board meetings at ILC where we could accommodate everybody, I would be in support of that. And I think that would sort of be the best of both worlds. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Trustee Silzer.
Thank you, Chair. So I would speak against the motion that's on the floor right now, just because I think it's not as safe and it's not as inclusive. I like the idea that it would be committee day at the school board office for staff convenience. Yes, that's a good idea. But I think we've got to try to be as accessible as possible. And right now, the virtual way of meeting, Teams, is the most convenient. So I wonder, well, I'll just speak to this, and then maybe we'll probably be able to figure out another one if this motion defeats, because this is like a little, Rubik's Cube or something. We're trying different combinations, and it's just to figure out what tools and full meetings. Like I say, I think we're not at the point. We cannot forget that today we have the highest number of cases we've ever had. 600 cases on Vancouver Island, half of them in southern Vancouver Island, in our region. And the numbers are a little different between the CDC and Vancouver and Island Health, but basically it's either 565, I think it is, or 600 and something, that the number of cases on Vancouver Island. So we don't need to get into the whole danger of the Delta variant, but I agree with Trustee Selk. If you have any vulnerability or any children, for heaven's sakes, who are being exposed to the Delta variant, we're not operating very safely. On the other hand, we have to, and the reason that I'm also opposed to this is because we're not really able to distance very well in either location, because for committees and committee day and the board meetings, I would say the committee days have even more people potentially than board meetings. With our partners and trustees and senior staff, well, just trustees and senior staff, we have 11 people, plus the 4 partners, that's 15. 15 people in the school board boardroom is too close, in my view. So that's why I'm speaking out against this motion, because of the physical inability to distance, and the fact that our technology can help us. And I'm remembering too that we did have staff. We had Assistant Superintendent Mackenzie and the superintendent attend virtually last year, I believe, in the fall. We did that somehow, and maybe there's just more technology to pursue. Thank you.
Trustee Martin?
Thanks, Chair. Just I related to the calling in and wanting to be as most inclusive. I think one of the things about if we're not set up technologically for it, it is a real onus on staff. I'm one of those people that had to call in, and the superintendent had to be turning his computer around, and so it really takes away from the staff. So we saw with our consultant that called into SPAC, and it was great to have Mr. McKay there. It does change the dynamic. So if we're not set up virtually for it, I think it is problematic. And I think it just ends up staff managing that on top of trying to manage a committee day. So I would recommend not either doing one virtually where we're set up, so in the boardroom at the committee day, and I think that makes great sense if we can do it. Maybe we move to something that committee members and senior staff be in the room for that committee day and everybody else join virtually. I don't like that sense of kind of staggering it, but I do agree with Trustee Silzer. I think that, we need to be very prudent. And having said that, I recognize our staff, teachers and support and administrators are in our schools each and every day, and it's very anxiety. So I don't think it's an easy answer, but I would not recommend the calling in model out of respect. I just think it's too problematic for staff.
Thank you. Mr. Reid.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just couldn't remember if it had been mentioned as part of this discussion or not, but with respect to recording and archiving board meetings, that could occur for blended meetings in the boardroom, but it would not be possible for any meetings in the ILC room. The technology just won't work in the room with that dimensions and configuration.
Okay. I'm not seeing any further hands with respect to discussing Trustee McMurphy's motion for board meetings at ILC in person and committee meetings at the board office in person. So I will put the question. All in favor? Opposed? The motion is defeated.
I move we don't have any meetings until the COVID is gone.
I think we're unanimous about that. I think Trustee Holman, you were next.
Would I be out of line to put option 4 forward for a second time?
What did we do with that? Defeated it? Mr. Reid, there are rules.
Yes, it was defeated. Sorry.
Yeah, there are rules about revisiting or reconsidering motions. I think it has to be moved by a person who was on the winning side or something like that. Does that ring a bell, Mr. Reid? It's probably unfair to put you on the spot for something like that.
In reconsidering the exact motion that was just defeated?
Yes.
My assumption would be that that's not in order, but I can't think of the exact paragraph in Roberts that would say so.
Just a sec.
I know it can be done in the right circumstances.
Can I ask a follow-up?
You want me to read it, what it says?
Yes, please.
If a motion has been either adopted or defeated during a meeting, and at least one member who voted on the winning side wants to have the vote reconsidered, such a member may make the motion to reconsider.
Okay.
It has to be someone who voted on the prevailing side, who voted in favor of defeating the motion.
And, all right.
And I voted against it.
You voted against it? So then, and it was defeated. So yes, you could move reconsideration, Trustee Holman.
So moved.
Is there a seconder to reconsider? Trustee Silzer. Trustee Holman. Is this a motion? Sorry, this is a motion to reconsider, right, Trustee McMurphy? No, not the merits. So we vote on the fact of whether we're going to reconsider, right? And if that's successful, then we can go to the motion. Trustees, do you understand that? We're voting on the Trustee Holman's motion whether we choose to reconsider the defeated motion for option 4. Are you ready for the motion on that? All in favor of reconsideration? 1, 2, 3. I see 3. Opposed? 1, 2. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing everybody. Can I see in favor of reconsideration again? I see Trustee Van Well, how are you voting?
I see 3.
I thought I saw Trustee Van Well's hand up.
No, I'm not voting in favor of this.
All right, thank you. 3 in favor of reconsidering. Opposed? How many opposed?
1, 2,
1, 2, 3. So
3.
The motion to reconsider is defeated. All right.
Mr.
I don't
Chair,
have any suggestions, folks.
If I could interject here for a second, Mr. Chair, if there's no decision that is being made, then I would argue that we're staying status quo until the board makes a motion to change something differently.
That would be my view. Who's next? I think Trustee Van Well, then Trustee Martin.
I was actually going to make the same suggestion as Superintendent Everwent. I'm not entirely sure why this has gotten so complicated. I think that if there are some people that are truly uncomfortable but would like everybody to be the same, I think we should just continue on as we are now until we feel that as a board that it's safe to meet in person as a whole group.
All right. And thank you, Trustee Martin.
Thank you. I agree with what the superintendent said. I'm just wondering if it's late. It's been a long night. I wonder if we say that, and I know this doesn't give stability, is that for October committee and board meeting, we stay virtual to be determined by the COVID situation, and then we can revisit this when we're fresher next month. And then at least it gives us a pathway. I don't think we're going to get anywhere tonight in terms of making a decision. So my recommendation is, and then at least it gives us till next month and it's not ongoing.
I agree, Trustee Martin. That's why I'm saying I'm out of ideas, because the board is clearly divided on the approach. Trustee Silzer?
Thank you. Yes, I totally agree with that. We're too tired to figure out how we're going to proceed, but something is niggling in my mind about what Director Reed said about staff meetings and how getting back to engaging in person was really important to the functioning of a staff, and that's why I think we should at least be trying to meet in person for our board effectiveness, basically, because it is a real balancing act, and I agree that we should stop talking about it and decide next month.
Well, how about this, trustees? Is there any objection to Trustee Martin's suggestion that, given the time, given the obvious division on the board on this issue, that we plan on the October meetings being held virtually? Is there any objection to that? And reconsidering it again in October? Trustee Martin, Trustee Holman?
I'm not objecting to that, but I would like perhaps a motion to table the report for further discussion and deliberation to the October meeting, just as a formality.
Trustee McMurphy?
I move we postpone consideration of the matter to the October meeting.
Seconder, Trustee Holman, I take it. All right. Any debate on that? Seeing none. All in favor of postponement? Opposed? Not seeing anybody. The motion's carried. It's postponed to October. And I take it from that, folks, that the status quo will prevail for October. We'll have virtual meetings. Is that the understanding? Does anybody object to that? All right. That's what we'll do. Thank you. This is one of those tender issues where we're trying to do the right thing, but it isn't completely clear. Trustee McMurphy?
I'm ready to move the next motion.
Would you please?
I move that the board approve the 2021-22 annual work plan.
Is there a seconder? Trustee Selzer, do you wish to speak to your motion, Trustee McMurphy?
Yes, just briefly, the Secretary Treasurer has made the obvious and necessary updates to the plan. I've read it. I presume everybody else has. I don't have any other suggestions, so I think it's good to go.
Anybody else? Then I'll put the question. All in favor of the motion to approve the annual work plan? Opposed? Motion's carried. The third item is the food sustainability list issue. And as I recall, Trustee Holman, you had a question about that. That's why it's here.
Yes, thank you. I very much appreciated the report. I can't remember now when it was last school year, about the food security programs that are operating, I believe, in almost every school. And there was a motion passed by the board that we have a list of what those are, with the understanding that it would be helpful to those in need to know that they have a chance to see where that list is. I believe the motion was to bring the list to an in-camera meeting for board consideration. And I'm just thinking with sort of increased concern around food security, particularly because of COVID, that it would be beneficial to do that sooner rather than later. And I'm just looking for, I know it's on the to-do list. I'm just wondering if that would be coming forward in October, indicating that it's in progress. So would appreciate knowing if it would be to us in October.
Mr. Eberwin, on mute.
Sorry. The plan is to bring it this fall. It'll either come in October or the next board meeting. There's been a lot on our plates. It's certainly something that we're working on and pulling together, and we'll have it to you this fall. That's our plan at this point. Thank you.
Good enough, Trustee Holman?
Well, I guess my concern goes for folks within the schools or the community who would benefit from that list sooner rather than later. And sorry, I don't know what the complexity is to providing the list of where students who are experiencing food insecurity could gain help. I just see it as something that if we had it on the website available, it would be better to do it sooner rather than later, given the nature of the concern.
We'll bring it to the October meeting, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then the fourth item, Trustee Martin, this was your inquiry with respect to the traffic safety evaluation at the CDC?
Yes, and I think it was raised at a public meeting, and it was around when the construction had started, and I think we're nearing the end and have a beautiful school, and I recognize it, given with COVID and everything else, we may not have had the time for staff to look at it, but I think we were going to speak to the principal and see what his perspective was. There's been probably 10 to 15 community members who've stopped me, and they're really worried about the speed off the highway that comes right up in front of our school. And recognizing it, I'm sure has probably not been a top priority, but if we could get some information on that in the next couple months, it would be excellent.
Mr. Eberwin, are you with us still?
He just stepped away. There he is.
All right.
Yes,
we
will try and pull something together. We'll meet with the school administration and see if there's some kind of a report we can pull together for the board.
Chair Dunford, just to follow up, I think Superintendent, what we were doing was just an initial inquiry, not a report, and you were going to just bring back that initial inquiry just to see what the principal's first thought was. I don't think the board had asked for a study, just to be really clear. I think it was an initial inquiry, so I don't want work to be done that doesn't need to be done. So if we can get an initial feedback from the school staff, that would be great.
Yeah, we can do that for you.
All right, Trustee McMurphy, I see your hand up. Is it intended to be, or are you just?
Well, it wasn't intended, but I could move adjournment.
Well, you don't have to do that, but I was going to ask if there's any objection, but my feeling is that there must be something else we can do to take us to 11 o'clock and then seek leave to carry on after 11 o'clock.
Good night, Chair Dunford.
That's not receiving a lot of support, I can tell. Thanks. Thank you, folks. It's been a long meeting, a lot of business. Thank you to each of you. Thank you, staff. Thank you, partners and public who have borne with us throughout. We've got a lot done on some difficult issues. Is there any objection to adjourning at this time? Seeing none, I declare that we are adjourned at 10:35 p.m. and I wish you all well for the balance of the evening. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Good night all.